Absolutely. Well, Chris, guess what? Everything sounds good. We're live. Welcome back, everyone, to another The
Hello.
Film Hang. This is session 4. Can't believe we're already 4 sessions in. So that means we've been doing this for a month, Chris, which is super exciting. We got Tom in the chat. We're rolling this out right now. And
Tom.
welcome, everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy Valentine's Day weekend. I know I'm excited to be back to talk about
Me
6
too.
movies, like you were just saying.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've had a good time together. And you're right. For a month, I think we've had like 230,000 is it views on Instagram. So a lot of people wanting to look in on stuff. I think that Eyes Wide Shut really helped that, being out the week of the Epstein inquiry. But you know, I think that we've done well. We've got a lot of people looking at our stuff, which is good, and it's nice just to chat films, isn't it? You know, like, I mean, you and I do this pretty much every Sunday or whenever we can sort of get on the phone to each other. We do it for a while, but it's nice to do it with people also watching and helping us do our research and tell us if we're wrong and telling us if they have different opinions. It's good.
Oh yeah, 100%. I really love these sessions and appreciate we have a bunch of people watching on YouTube, and you know, for those that have not seen our earlier episodes, you said it there perfectly, that the Film Hang, this is meant to be this place where we can talk cinema. And if you have not seen our earlier episodes, we started off with Amadeus, which was really awesome, and that was what got this whole Film Hang started, is Chris's passion for that movie. Eyes Wide Shut, just speaking to that for a second, considering the time that we're in and how topical that is, without getting too deep and lost in the whole, files that have come out, definitely go check out Eyes Wide Shut. I feel like, considering what's in the news, that movie does such a good job of talking to what Kubrick knew so many years ago, but what's finally coming full circle. And then after that, we had a really awesome The Deer Hunter with Michael Cimino, the Film Hang, which was last week, which was huge. Honestly, one of my favorite films. And Chris, the way that you talked about that movie was awesome.
Oh, you got some music blasting out then.
Yeah, I know. My HomePod just started. But yeah, we're super excited to be back. And for those that don't know me, my name is Brendan. I am CEO of Filmmakers Academy, filmmaker myself, and co-host here with Chris. Chris, tell us about yourself.
I'm good, man. I'm somebody who works writing taglines for movie posters. That's one of the things that I do. And I also work on sets whenever people need me as part of the AD team. PAing sometimes on things like I did Michael Jackson, the Michael movie, which is going to come out in April, which looks very exciting. There's lots of videos online, trailers going out right now that is certainly getting people excited. And also just done some work on Jumanji 3, which is the new one with, who is it? Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, Karen Gillan. So that's really cool. So yeah, that's what I do, and we both love film. And Brendan and I, as he's just said, we love to get on the phone to each other and chat films. And whenever we've been and seen one at the cinema, usually I'll drop him a text and say, "This is the best film I've ever seen." And then like 2 weeks later, I'll go, "Okay, maybe it was the best I've seen this year." And then like a month will go by, and I'll go, "Okay, it was like top 5 for this year." And then before I know it, by the next month, I probably hate the guts of the movie. But like, this is what we do all the time. So having you guys on board, Topher, etc., it's great having you here, because there's nothing I like better than just chatting about these movies and talking to people online and in person as well about them. So thanks for joining.
So true. Well, Chris, let's kick it off with one movie that's not actually on the list, but we both saw yesterday, and that is Wuthering Heights. I would love to know your take. I believe you've read the source material. I have not read the original source material, being the book. But what were your thoughts on the film? I know it's been quite the discussion these last, 48 hours, 72 hours since the movie came out.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people talking about it. And it's wild because I read reviews before I went, which I always do, stupidly. But I read reviews before I went, and there was a lot of bad reviews from people like Collider, who I think gave it like a 2 out of 10. Who I really like Collider's output. I like what they're doing, but they had quite a vitriolic response to it. I don't think any movie really ever deserves a 2 out of 10. In honesty. And I read a few others that were quite scathing about it. But when I went and watched it, actually, I really liked the look of the film. I thought that Lee Sandgren, oh my God, what a phenomenal cinematographer we've got in our hands here. You know what I mean? Linus Sandgren has done some wonderful things on other films, but if this was just testament to his work alone, and I tried to do that with this when I talk about Road to Perdition later on, I tried to do this with Conrad Hall. If this was all of his work that I was seeing right here in this film, what would I think of him as a cinematographer? And obviously, Road to Perdition's arguably my favorite looking film ever. So, like, that's how I felt about Linus Sandgren. I sat there and I watched it and I thought, if I hadn't seen any of his other stuff, what would I think of Linus as a cinematographer? And I thought, wow. I mean, absolutely visually brilliant. You know,
I would
every
agree.
shot.
He's, if you aren't familiar with his work, he's done everything from Saltburn to working with Damien Chazelle on La La Land, Babylon, one of the great contemporary cinematographers up there with Hoyta, Deakins, you name it. And I think you're completely in the right direction with how good this movie looked, from the set design to his lighting and to speaking to his craft. And, you know, I was like, what makes his movies look so good in comparison to the rest? One, he shoots on 35 millimeter, or just film in general for almost all of his projects. I don't think that there's a movie in his filmography, at least to my knowledge, that has been shot digitally. I don't think that's what the degree of separation is, considering what modern cinematography is in the advent of LED technology and people favoring soft light. I see Linus using a lot more hard light, especially in Wuthering Heights. One of the parts of that movie that I love so much is the traditional lighting style that took on in the film. And it wasn't always perfect. There were some shots sometimes that were buzzed and soft, but that also reminded me of like classical cinema, something that would come out of the 60s, 70s, more hard light, very not simple, because nothing in that movie was definitely easy or simple to pull off. They put a lot of money on screen. And before I even get into my thoughts about the movie, what you said, cinematography wise, one of the best looking movies that I've seen recently. And his work, especially with Emerald, goes a long way. His look in Saltburn was brilliant. Again, a movie that did not get recognized. Well, I think it got nominated, right, last year.
I think it got a nom,
Yeah.
but you're right. It wasn't even contemplated for cinematography as opposed to everything else that was against it, I think. I can't remember if it was Dune that was out at the same time, but whatever was out at the same time, nobody was really thinking about Saltburn for cinematography. But yeah, you're right. Stunningly beautiful. Great shot.
Yeah.
You know, really well shot. I mean, one of the things, have a look through, see what it says. But yeah, one of the things that I love about Wuthering Heights, and what I like about his work with Emerald Fennell, is there's a wholeness to it all. Every single element working together. You know what I mean? You can tell that this guy knew the brief. He knew what he had to shoot. He knew how he had to shoot. I mean, one of the things I read, it looks a little bit like a kind of Gone with the Wind in certain respects, especially in the marketing materials. There's kind of this Gone with the Wind kind of element to it, even in the poster. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, right now, 6.4 out of 10. I mean, it's a pretty low blow for a movie, but going back to what you're saying, I mean, this does look like Gone with the Wind, and I know a lot of people are like, what the hell is this poster? It looks like clip art. This even got scrutinized far before the movie even came out. A lot of people did not like the styling and the look, and this is a movie that is based on a book that I think at this point, this is the 5th adaptation of the book. And I know Emerald, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was supposed to kind of be a loose adaptation. It was more a spiritual adaptation than like beat by beat, right?
Right. Well, I mean, there's a lot of changes from the original, from the book. And it's written by one of the Bronte sisters, I think Anne Bronte. Oh, Charlotte Bronte was Jane Eyre. So yeah, Anne Bronte, I think it was. And yeah, you're right. It's been covered 5 times. I think the most recent was 2010, and it was Andrea Arnold who did. If anybody's seen Fish Tank, it was one of hers. And yeah, they've changed a lot. I mean, lots of people are complaining that Heathcliff has been whitewashed by having Jacob Elordi doing it, because Andrea Arnold's is the only one that has a I don't know how you call him, probably a black Heathcliff is probably the best way to describe it. But I mean, at the same time, you know, it's got those speech marks around it because it's Emerald Fennell's 14-year-old sort of first time she read it. This is what she was thinking of. This is where her mind went, you know, and interpretation of it. And I think if you go into it with that mindset as well, like when we went, so my wife and I went at 9:45 in the morning to Burbank, right? So first thing in the morning, you're watching this. You yeah, we kind of said, look, if this was for 14-year-olds or for those people who are growing up who would have read Wuthering Heights at that time and etc., the Bridgerton crowd, let's call them, okay, then it's great. You know what I mean? It's kind of a 50 Shades of Grey meets Bridgerton kind of style thing.
Yeah.
And, Emerald Fennell is never going to do something that's strictly by the book or anything like that. She didn't do it with Saltburn. It always, like, I think Tina Fey made a joke that it always takes a strange turn in a strange twist or turn in the third act. It does. But
She's definitely a provocateur.
yeah,
She's one of those type
she likes
of
to provoke
directors.
you.
Yeah.
She does. The
Mhm.
bathtub scene in Saltburn is a prime example of it. She likes to kind of, flip the script on you. I think she was a little bit more conservative with Promising Young Woman because there wasn't that shock moment. But certainly in Saltburn there was. And then in this, the same kind of thing. You got Margot Robbie up against a rock. You've got all these kind of things going off. There's kind of a BDSM element to it. So there's all that kind of stuff in there, which wasn't in the original. But I mean, as I said, it's Emerald Fennell's mind working. And I suppose if everything goes by the book, then lots of people will know where it's going to end. That's what makes, the final seasons of Game of Thrones so much more exciting. They were ahead of the book. Nobody knew what was going to happen. And in the same way with this, it was quite nice that we didn't know what was going to happen. I thought that, just looking out there, it was, it's based where I'm from, sort of North Yorkshire. So the Bronte sisters came from this little place called Keighley, which is near in North Yorkshire, near Brighouse, which is this lovely place, and it's very much on the moors like this. And she captured that very dull, dreary sort of British landscape really, really well, and then contrasted it with when the rich people came to town and they had these gorgeous ornate gardens. There was lots of that kind of contrast in there. One of the things that I thought was most interesting was the character of Isabella was fascinating, like as a kind of comedic turn at first, and then the twist that she takes is quite startling. You know what I mean? And did you notice at the end? I mean, I got this feeling at the end that she'd been writing these letters that Heathcliff couldn't read because she mocks him for it. I got this sense that she'd written these letters to Nellie and basically told her to not show them to Catherine. Margot Robbie's Catherine. I got this sense that because he couldn't read, she was writing, and this was her way of getting Heathcliff back. That was what I thought, and that was why this whole thing came about, because Catherine wasn't getting any notifications or any, letters or anything from Heathcliff, so she just allowed herself to die effectively. You know what I mean? I think that it's a brilliant film in that respect.
That's interesting, and not even that gives a spoiler away or anything. It's just
Doesn't
that is
matter.
actually good.
Yeah.
No, that's good context, because I didn't even think about that in relation to his character.
Yeah, well, because Margot Robbie takes a twist. I mean, what I like about, as I said, Emerald Fennell characters as well, I like the fact that they're not just one-dimensional in that respect. It's not like, I mean, some people have written it in reviews and they're totally wrong. To say that this is just a romantic heroine who desperately needs love and everything like this, it's just not true. There's elements in this in this story, where Margot Robbie actually becomes quite repulsive. And her treatment of Isabella is definitely one of those things. When she grabs her hair and pulls it, and basically tells her, who's the dog in the manger or whatever it was she said. What a great line, especially when you think later on, when there's this BDSM element with Isabella, we have her pretending to be a dog, you know what I mean? And who's the dog in the manger now? I thought was, a great bit of foreshadowing of that. The costume design was absolutely unbelievable. You know what I mean?
It was
just
production design, costume design. It was incredible.
Production
Set decoration.
Did you notice that all of the candlesticks had these hands that were holding the candles? Did you notice that
Oh,
on
the wall?
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, also even the fireplace and the way, and I love, I'm not trying to bounce around, but even the wall with the flesh color tones and what she was trying to play with that in her own room. It's just outside of the box, and I think that's what Emerald Fennell does so well. Whether you relate to her movies, whether it's the subject matter you would want it to be, her as a director, when you just look at her ability to work with a team, and it's also the team behind her, Linus, her production team, the actors, the source material that she's pulling from, she's putting a lot on screen, and I think it shows that even though she's a provocateur and that's the whole point, it is meant to be polarizing. I don't think that
Mm.
she's trying to make a movie that people 100% like, in the same way that when Nicholas Winding Refn makes a film, he is always said if a movie is completely loved, then it sucks. If it divides the audience, then it could be brilliant. And I
Yeah.
think she kind of operates in the same capacity, where I am going to, for lack of a better way to say it, F with the audience,
Mm.
manipulate them, provoke them through some really strong imagery and subject matter, and ultimately tell this story about two somewhat loathsome characters to a certain
Mm.
degree, especially by the third act. It's like, what you once liked about them, is it even still there by the third act of the film? And I think she does a really good job. Even in Saltburn, you see
Mm.
the same thing. You follow these characters that you really want to like, but at the same time, by the end of the film, you're also kind of repulsed by everybody in this world. There is not really
Correct.
someone that you're rooting for. And I think that's the same case here. There's no one by the end of this movie that, at least for me as the audience member after seeing it yesterday, was like, wow, I really loved that character, but I also believe that's by design. And that's what she
Mm.
ultimately wants to tell, especially about the hierarchy in this world, and being of the lower class and being with the upper class, and also being divided by love. I think for what the film was operating with and knowing her, I
Sure.
really liked it. Does that mean that I think it was perfect in its execution, especially with story?
Mm.
There felt like something was missing. Like, for example, my wife, she cried watching the movie. And also her friend cried watching the movie. And I thought that was such a strong response. And maybe it's because of the female perspective in the film. It's not something that I personally relate to, especially when you see what's his name's character, this gentleman, what's his name? Lyndon.
Edgar Linton. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, his character is so passive, and without giving too much away, it's literally, this guy is just allowing all of this stuff to happen throughout the film between the two main characters. And you're like, where is the backbone? And even when Heathcliff comes back after the unfortunate events in the third act, and,
Mm.
he says sorry, I'm like, dude, what are you doing there? As like, I don't know, it's just the dynamic between the characters so fascinating. But yeah, I would
It
love to know
is.
your thoughts with what you liked and didn't like.
I'm with you on that in terms of characterization. I think there is
Yeah.
something missing. You know what I mean? Like, you're right with that Edgar. It's like he's a glutton for punishment. He enjoys the fact that
He's like
I
the
don't know.
nicest guy in the world and just takes every punch. I'm like, at
Yeah.
what point are you ever, even when he's upset, and maybe he's just meant to be like a doofus, he's like got all of this money and could never like pull a woman. I have no idea. And, she essentially falls into his world, and he doesn't know how to manage it, and ultimately he wants a kid. But it's like, there was never a single point in the story where he even like tried to drive it. Even though when he
No.
got mad and verbalized it, it wasn't like he was actually driving the situation at all.
No, he was. He was a cuckolded man, wasn't he, in that respect?
Yeah.
I think that's the
That's the
best way
best
to
way to put
describe
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
exactly what
exactly
it
what I
was.
said to Kier leaving the movie. I was like, cuckold the movie.
Yeah. That's what he was. And then the same way, look at Elodie's character. I mean, Elodie was like, such a Heathcliff. In
Yeah.
the book is about vengeance, right? And he wants his revenge against Catherine. He wants his revenge against the fact that she went off with somebody else who's richer, all this, right? And, um, obviously, when you see this, yes, he is a vengeful character and everything like this, but there's still this kind of like, he holds a candle out to the fact that he could still be with Catherine. It's like, I just wanted him to go full on. You know what I mean? I wanted to see how far we could push Heathcliff to that edge, and he never really made it. You know what I mean? And in the end, as I said, when this kind of reunification of him and Catherine at the end, it just felt a little bit kind of, I didn't deserve it. That was the truth of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We
Yeah.
hadn't got to that nth degree. We kind of were just at the beginning of their sort of villain arc. We hadn't reached the end of it. But I mean, at the same time, it's a 2 hour movie, and she probably didn't want to go over to 2.5 hours to 3 hours or anything like that. So didn't want to elongate those moments of just being bastardly towards each other.
And you know what's interesting, considering Emerald Fennell's work and what she did, especially in Saltburn? I don't know if it's because they wanted to make sure that this movie was met with box office success and maybe didn't have the type of aversion that came with Saltburn just due to the graphical nature. I was
Right.
honestly kind of expecting this film to be a bit more like
Raunchy.
sexually driven and raunchy.
Yeah.
Honestly, did not lean like build up to the hype that I felt like everyone thought the film was going to be. I don't know if it's
Mm.
because they handicapped Emerald Fennell. I don't know if it was because of Margot Robbie. I know that she became a mom this last year, at least the year
Mm.
before. I don't know if she was trying to conserve her image, which is totally understandable, but I almost
Yeah.
felt like it needed to go like one more degree dialed up in terms of like intensity, especially because these two characters have that whole montage moment that I just don't feel works when
No.
ultimately they decide to connect and like he comes back into her life. And I just felt like what they were building up to, with even in the trailer and what we know about this story,
Mm.
that's where they missed the mark the most, was that
Mhm.
it didn't get as steamy as even the likes of something that's not even that good of a movie, 50 Shades of Grey. Not that it needs to be super gratuitous. I don't think it needs to
No.
go full on like, I don't know, Euphoria or another show or something that's like, I think there can still be a balance, but it felt like it was kind of safe at
Mm.
times,
Mm.
where it could have used Emerald's kind of pushing the boundaries and pushing the needles for someone that is a provocateur. I think that she did not provoke enough in this movie, to be
You're
honest.
right. You're right. And I think the themes are still there, that idea of rich and poor and the poor
Yeah.
person rising up to the ranks of the riches. You know what I mean? Like in Saltburn, it was done so well. This Barry Keoghan or Barry Keoghan, however you want to describe it. Him being this poor lad coming from Liverpool and, like basically finding his way into this mansion and basically subverting everything with the family and, doing them all over and then becoming the person who's in charge of the household. I was kind of expecting that with Catherine, that she would find a way in and weasel a way in and then find a way of destroying Edgar and then becoming sort of the head of the household and bringing Heathcliff in. I thought that was going to happen, but it didn't go there, and that's fine. That's kind of Emerald Fennell, as we say. I mean, another thing I thought, I always like this with Fennell, and if you watch back to like Promising Young Woman, is a really good example of this. There's shots all the way through, and somebody will have done this. This is definitely on YouTube, I'm sure, of the Christ-like imagery of Carey Mulligan's character. I think when she's first seen, she looks a little bit like Christ on the cross. Then there's another bit where she's looking down and she's framed perfectly, where it looks like she's the Madonna. The not Madonna as in like a virgin, uh, or Holiday. I mean, like Mary Magdalene. There's shots of her like that. That Emerald Fennell does a lot of that in this, and obviously the color red is one thing that we'll always talk about. But I always found crosses were really interesting. I don't mean Christ crosses, even though there's lots of those in there. I mean like this. So we have like these X symbols, I think you'd call them, whenever she crosses a character. And so she's sitting on a swing at the first part. And this is something to watch if you want to go and see this film. There's points where she's sitting on a swing and she's being pushed by that Isabella. And as soon as that Isabella says she would like to get to know Heathcliff or whatever, she twists around in the swing. So it forms an X with the ropes above her head. And that was the moment she decided to cross Isabella. And then there's a bit when she crosses Nellie, the Asian maid, where her dress has got a big red X on the back of it. And it's this wonderful shot by Lena Sangren that's sort of from behind her. And you've just got this X on her back, and Nellie goes from one side of the screen to the other and just walks across when she's been sent away and told to go and find a job somewhere else. And it's like this, as I said, every time that Catherine crossed somebody or chose that was it. I'm sure there'll be one for her dad as well, not played by Martin Clunes, really well done. We'll see that. But this is kind of a bit like The Departed, I think it was, that had X's in whenever anybody was going to be killed. A bit like that. I think that I'm fairly certain that that's Emerald Fennell's way. When I went to watch, I watched a really good Q&A with Emerald Fennell when she did Saltburn. It was up at MRC with the PGA. And we went and watched this showing of Saltburn, and then afterwards she was talking, and she said her producers said one of the cool things with Emerald Fennell is when we're doing a project, we will hire out an office building with 4 or more floors. And then we'll have Emerald on the top floor, and we'll have like the costume design and production design on the second floor. And then we'll have, whatever underneath that, and, cinematography, whatever. and literally she can go from the top floor all the way down and go and talk to all of the departments. And I think that adds to that thing we were saying before, which is all about, everything being very whole. There's a very wholeness of the composition. Every single thing seems to work with everything else. You know what I mean? And very much like Guillermo del Toro with Frankenstein. And yeah, you see it on this. You see how well put together it is. It's crafted. There's a great shot. Isabella's playing with dolls, and she's got a literal scale version, like a dollhouse of her own house with everybody in the house, being. And I was, by the way, Emerald Fennell used the same thing in Saltburn. So we saw that doll's house, we saw the players, we saw them all being moved around on the stage by him. So Emerald Fennell has a fingerprint of using dolls to represent humans and how it's a world within a world kind of thing.
In architecture, just homes in general. Homes are very essential, at least in these two last films. But
yeah, I mean, very Shining-like. You know what I mean? Looking down on the maze and then they're in the maze, that kind of thing, that movement. We had the same thing here with the crossfade that she's talked about in a couple of interviews, which she was really impressed with. And it was impressive, you know what I mean? You go from literally the room to having the hand go into the room, and it looks like this big arms coming through the window to set these dolls in place. You know what I mean? It was my first sense that Isabella was going to start playing with people, and ultimately that feels to me like what's happened. But yeah, I love the film, and I think we were just saying before we came on air, it's great. If you watch a film with a crowd, it certainly impacts, what your feeling is towards that film. I think that had I seen this at home, I'd have been on my phone or something like that. I wouldn't have been as noticing. I wouldn't have been as focused if I'd been watching it on streaming or anything like that. I'd have been distracted by other things, and I might not have had the same reaction. But the crowd I went and watched it with, as I said, 9:45 on a Saturday morning on Valentine's Day, they were, they were loving it. There was moments of cheers, there were moments of applause, there were moments where you could hear them sniffling. Like you said, Kira cried. So it's definitely getting some strong emotional reactions from people, and I think that can only be a good thing for cinema. So yeah, whether you like
it
it or
already
not,
made 80 million or whatever, 80 million at the box. Yeah, 82 million. And yeah, I would agree. It was a fun Valentine's Day movie experience, and it does what Valentine's Day movies are supposed to do, kind of be hot and steamy. And it was super funny because I was like asking Kier, these movies are very much manufactured with purpose as well. Maybe not by Emerald Fennell, but by the studio itself and what date they're targeting. And the goal to obviously get ticket sales and piggyback off of a time where there is a large economy built around, hey, buying flowers, going on dates, going on out to the movies. That's super important, right? And I'm like, do you think that Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie ever sit and think, wow, we're making a movie essentially to get people excited to go home and have sex? That's kind of, that's like what the movie by design ultimately, like if you look at it as an equation, that is ultimately the outcome for a lot of people that go and watch that. So it's super funny. I'm like, I know they're all aware, but it's like, do they ever have that conversation like while they're making this film that, oh yeah, this moment's going to translate into X?
It's certainly doing wonders for my accent because I always thought that this accent was kind of like a poor, like working class kind of like we're going down the pit, we're going down the mine, and like that kind of voice, back in the UK. But now it's becoming like Jacob Elordi's using it. We've had prior to that we had Game of Thrones with what's his name, Kit Harington. So they're all wanting to do a bit of this accent. You know what I mean? what was it? I'll follow you like a dog to the end of the world. I was like, hey, right here. I've been saying it to court for the past 24 hours.
That's awesome. Yeah. So everyone definitely go check out Wuthering Heights. I think it's worth a watch. Might not be your favorite movie, but I think the filmmaking, even at the minimum, is there, and it's great from a craftsmanship angle and the cinematography, production design, even the acting's good. There's great work done there. I think the script was ultimately its shortcoming. Maybe it was its casting too. Maybe Margot wasn't the right fit. That's even something that Kier and I talked about, but we want to know what you guys think. And to even just put one final note, because I did want to say this about the importance of in theater experiences. And I know that we want to have an upcoming episode where we talk about Hamnet and do a deep dive, because between Chris and I, we go back and forth whether that was the best movie we both saw in 2025.
Agreed.
There's so much good cinema that's always like a chess game to what's actually our favorite film, which kind of a dumb question, but that was a great example of an in-theater experience, one that felt communal,
Was.
one that felt like going to church. Not that Wuthering Heights was that, but to think of another one that really hit, like, hard this last year
Mm,
especially, that just goes to show the importance of seeing movies in person. And I hope to see that trend continue. And, the numbers coming off of last year were super fascinating, especially because Gen Z is making up so much of the ticket sales. What's good is it shows the medium still has captured youth's interest. Not that all
mm,
movies should be made for a younger demographic, but that's always going to be the largest consumer class that
mm,
especially you want something like cinema to feed off of and to be able to be kept alive is you want youth to be excited to see movies. And the fact that we're making movies that are getting them away from their phones and watching 3 hours, sometimes long pieces of cinema. Look at Oppenheimer. That was a great example of having a very diverse audience base. It was not just 65-year-old scholarly men. It was and it's Nolan, granted, he gets a large audience, but I'm super excited for in person experiences. I think that they're here to stay. I think people want that. Not that streaming is not going to always be a competitive form of watching films,
mm.
but I hope that in person stays in physical media. I just want to drop that because I drop that every episode. Please continue to buy Blu-rays. Please continue to buy DVDs. It's
Yeah.
super important. We need physical media because it is still, in my opinion, if you're not in a theater, the best way to watch it. And I know, Chris, that brings us to 6 movies that we think every filmmaker should have seen by now. And if you have not seen them, we hope that you will exit out of this film hang tonight and go and watch them this week because we have some good ones cooking up. And Chris, I know you have one in particular that I hope everyone has seen by now, but I'm going to pass it to you for the first one.
Yeah, we've got a bunch. I mean, like this was, but let me start by saying this was really hard, and this isn't like something whereby we just picked three films each that we thought were the best films in the world. That's not what we're doing, right? Because that would have crushed us. You know what I mean? To try and break those down into our top three films, because I don't think I've ever been able to articulate which are my top three films. And then it was a case of, right, we're not just putting down ones that pretty much everybody will have seen because they're absolutely token top five for a lot of people. Like There Will Be Blood. I imagine, you know, pretty much everybody watching this will either have seen it or have heard about it. Yeah, some people have put Terminator 2 in there as well. Another one, absolute classic. You know what I mean? Like, I imagine most people have seen that. So we didn't do that. We didn't do Interstellar or Inception or anything like that for that reason. Most Nolan. I imagine a lot of people will have seen most of Nolan. But yeah, we thought, right, what can we put down that some people might not have seen, that might not be as well known, that might have got like a short theatre release and not sort of been something that many people will have seen, and ones that people will have seen but didn't get the credit that they deserved when they came out, anything like that. So we thought about three each. And I'll be honest, Brendan, I sent you like 20 odd, didn't I, the first time, which was like my long list. And then we shortlisted and I was down to like 9 films. And then I sent you 6, and then I sent you 3. And then the next day I went, I'm rethinking 2 of these. It was a really tough ask. But yeah, hopefully some of you have seen these, in which case you can attest to how great they are. Just like somebody has there, somebody said Terminator 2, best cinematographer, lighting, and night scenes ever. Yeah, I kind of agree
I
with
would
you.
agree.
You know what I mean? But then, other people who haven't seen them, this is hopefully us sort of giving them a little nudge and saying, go and give this a watch. It's great. So the first one, which is one that you and I think that like we watched together actually. It's such a great movie. And it is this one right here. Let's get it into a slideshow so you can see. And all I'm doing here, I'm not actually giving you a lot of like notes or anything like that. I'm just talking through some of my favorite shots or anything like that. But this is Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler. And I absolutely love this movie more than anything. I find it difficult sometimes to talk about it, you know what I mean? Because I get I get emotional about the ending, you know what I mean? Still, even when I was trying to recite it to courts, you could see me going, and I'm not a guy who cries like at anything. I think I cried at the end of Cool Runnings, but that's like, but yeah, I mean, it gets me, this film. It's a really beautiful film by Darren Aronofsky. Right now, Aronofsky's going through it. He's getting some abuse online for doing this AI Time magazine sort of series about 1776 and the Civil War and everything like that. And I agree with a lot of, the sentiments about people feeling like he's sold out the industry by going with full AI. But looking at the wrestler, I can't not love this movie. All right, it's definitely one of my favorite films of all time. And there's, it's this beautiful portrait. I wrote this down just on my post-it notes. It's a beautiful portrait of aging, of people becoming obsolete, and about this kind of man left behind. Is the best way I can describe it. And this is the opening. I mean, we start off with all these great shots. In fact, I think this is it. Yeah, all these great shots of wrestling stars from all over the world, and and Madison Square Garden sold out, and big flashing lights, and people looking like fighters and wrestlers and gladiators in the ring. And then when it finally comes in, this is the shot, and it's him 20 years later, and he's sitting in like what looks like an elementary school classroom. You know what I mean? And somebody comes and gives him like a wad of cash for having fought that night. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, it literally brings you into that. And it's this wonderful masterclass in stripping away, that pretense of what wrestlers are all about, and what wrestlers are like. You know what I mean? It's this wonderful sort of film that strips away all of that and just shows you what these people are like in 30, 40 years time. I mean, we're seeing it right now. If you've ever looked on X or on Instagram, there's things about Ric Flair out there, and these wrestlers who were massive in the 80s and 90s, you know what I mean? And what becomes of them when they get older. And the fact that they kind of just get left on the scrap heap. As I said, obsolescence is the big word there, And Darren Aronofsky does this. He made Black Swan, which had this psychological intensity of a performer. We've then got, Requiem of a Dream, which is all about this descent into addiction. And then we've got now, The Wrestler was another thing about him being able to articulate human struggle and how difficult it is. Aronofsky has made this career of exploring these individuals who've been consumed by passion, consumed by addiction. And Randy the Ram is just one of them. He's just the physical embodiment of a character who's got lost. And I've got so many stories about how they made this. I mean, the cinematographer was called Maurice Alberti, and she came from documentary filmmaking. She started in documentary filmmaking, and what I love about documentary filmmakers, and one of the best cinematographers I know, like personally, Luke Wyatt, who hopefully is watching, and if he's not, then I've just given him a shout out. He shot my documentary, Song for Hope, on Amazon Prime right now, if anybody wants to stream it. And just having this eye and this ability to get verite, real shots that can tell a story just in a visual image. Brendan, you and I have talked about it. You were talking about using the Ursa Immersive at some point in the future as a journalistic tool to show a scene, something happening right there and then, and it's exactly the same here. I love these documentary filmmakers, these documentary camera people who are able to do this. And Maurice Alberti, by calling her a camera person, it's not respectful that, but this cinematographer is top notch. The way she captures this, we don't have any real talking for the first 15 minutes of the film. You know what I mean? She's just following around Mickey Rourke, you know what I mean, and observing him. We're just watching him. I suppose we're kind of our participant in his life, in terms of we're right on his shoulder as he walks out onto the stage, as he walks out into the ring, as he walks down through the crowd and stuff like that. And Maurice Alberti, as I said, this is what I came across her work, and I was like, this is amazing. You know what I mean? This is so well shot. It's so beautifully shot. Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of, Chris, just to chime in, especially with this almost cinema verite style. If you've never watched the two Belgian brothers, the directors, the Dardenne brothers, who this film, if you love the way that it looks, like, one, shot on 16 millimeter, absolutely beautiful grain structure. The documentary perspective, I think, works, especially considering the restraints that they had around making this film. I don't think that there was a ton of money to go around. They shot it in 40 days, which is crazy. So I know Aronofsky wanted to be mostly natural lit when possible, and all handheld 16 millimeters, so you get that really awesome shakiness. I feel like a lot of what inspired him, this is only an assumption, if you've never seen the Dardenne brothers, they did films like The Kid and the Bicycle, Rosetta. They've won multiple Palme d'Ors at Cannes, and they're just anyone that can master cinema verite, you can tell their taste for character, story, being able to craft that. And Aronofsky almost always has this like documentary perspective, at least
Mm,
this feeling of like grittiness in the way that he looks at the worlds that these characters inhabit. Even his most recent film, the one that came out last year, not that it
mm,
didn't feel like a movie, of course it did, especially that last one.
mhm.
But yeah, I think The Wrestler is just such a great example of what he does best in examining these characters that go to great lengths, even towards the end of their career, to continue to chase after that passion. You know,
Yeah,
we know people like this in our own life, people that will turn over every rock and knock on every door and will chase after every opportunity and even disregard certain aspects of their life just to be able to capture those moments of greatness. And I think
yeah.
we see that as a common through line in most of Aronofsky's work, you know?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I mean, it's us. You said it's like us. I mean, it's we all know that person. We are that person. This is the filmmaker ethos. You know what I mean? These people who reach a point. I mean, you saw it. LA went down a really difficult road for the last couple of years in terms of not having any productions, and there were people out there who were asking, "What do I do? What can I do? What am I now?" If I'm not doing this thing, because it's very difficult to have transferable skills after this, after you've been involved in production. You know, I'm witnessing it firsthand with people that I used to work with, who are, trying to figure out how they diversify their talents and stuff like that. This is the same with this guy. Once he becomes too old for the ring, what is he? What can he be? You know what I mean? So we've lived this. I think every filmmaker who's watching this is the same as the wrestler, and that's why we love it so much as a film. I'll also say this, going back to like we were talking about style there. You're right. It's handheld predominantly. I don't think there's hardly any points where it's locked off, and it's this kind of. I always saw it as this. It's shaky. It's rough. It's like Randy the Ram. You know what I mean? We're right there. We're right behind him. Sometimes we're even in front of him. You know what I mean? I think that it's quite cool early on that we don't see his face for quite a bit. We're just following him all over the place, and then eventually we come around and see him. You know, but literally the fact that we're there. And I love the fact that when he steps into the ring, things become really urgent. Things become really kind of, we're moving around and all this kind of stuff. We're seeing this kind of brutal behavior, and it's very similar. I think the Smashing Machine really looked at this. Benny Safdie, with Dwayne the Rock Johnson, when they did the Smash Machine, they definitely had one eye on the wrestler because it was done so well, you know. Um, and yeah, I think other things as well with her framing. When you look at like shots like this, hang on a minute, this one, every time that his personal life is shown, he's kind of on his own, he's isolated, and we show these big long streets with him just kind of there. You know what I mean? Kind of in a, I'm trying to find another one that's a good example of it. Yeah, like this with his trailer that he's living in, just on its own in the middle of nowhere. I mean, this looks like the Fargo shot, granted, but that kind of thing is beautiful framing and brilliantly done for the wrestler. I'd also say there's something to look out for. If you notice here, right, whenever he's doing anything wrestling related or anything where he's going into the ring wearing his beautiful fur, right, he's right down the center of the camera, right down the center of the lens, center of the screen. You know what I mean? He's right there, center punched, everything like this. Whenever he's doing anything else, he's kind of off to the side. Whenever he's doing like the deli work, he's always framed slightly off to the side, slightly out of the way. You know what I mean? Like that's not. There's something that's incomplete about the shot when you see that. And then, as I said, once you see him doing his thing in the ring or anything like that, we really try and home in on him and stuff. And I love that about the film. I think that was just one of the cool things that I noticed.
I love,
And
and I would
go on.
agree, Chris, just the way that the camera anchors, it's pulling, he's pulling the camera along, especially
Mm,
through these moments, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's leading out to the wrestling ring, he is the primary motivating factor. But these moments of
mhm.
indecision or where he has a life moment, the camera does become removed, which is really awesome. The way that they kind of juxtapose this type of imagery where he's always leading, even when he doesn't know where it's necessarily going, he's still
Mm.
this character that's chasing for that next beat in life or for that next opportunity just to stay afloat to get to the next match.
Yeah.
um yeah,
He's either dominating the frame like this, or he's dwarfed by it like this. You know what I mean? It's one or the other. We never really get any sort of other things like that. Look how I tastefully cut that, Sweeney, so that way we didn't get chucked off YouTube. But I love these kind of shots as well, where he's being shot through doorways and he looks incredibly small and incredibly weak, and he's sort of hunched over. You actually see the impact that wrestling has had on him. You know what I mean? And the other thing I'd say is, one of the things that Aronofsky allowed was these long, drawn out shots. Following him onto the ring takes a good while, and we just kind of follow him all the way. In the same way, when he's going out when he's going out working in the deli, and you can see he's got the hairnet on, and he's really, we do another long follow through. It's like we're seeing the reality of the situation. You know what I mean? And I'd say as well, I love using the word juxtaposes. It's my favorite word in the English language. I love how he juxtaposes, this larger than life Randy the Ram, and then this, I can't remember what his real name is, actually, the wrestler. It's evading me right now. Is his name Robin? I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, this sort of person who's on the other side. Find out what the name Mickey. I've always just called him the wrestler, right? One thing I'd say as well is, when on those long drawn out shots that we have like this, mate, the sound design, and I know that sounds so film schooly, but it's the one film where I can watch this and go, we follow him through and we hear all of these sounds that are going on as he passes through, behind back offices and through kitchens and stuff like that. It's the way that the ambient sound just hits you, the diegetic sound, as I think some film school people would call it, as you go through. It really does add to this film. Yeah, I mean, that was my thought process anyway.
You know what someone said in the comments here? Beautiful, powerful, so engaging, work at his best. And I think that's 100% a part of what makes this film so like heartbreaking is Mickey Rourke and Marissa Tomei's, their performance and their relationship. And of course, like Evan Rachel Wood is the daughter, Stephanie. Like,
She's
it's
brilliant.
a heartbreaking story, and then by the third act, you ultimately see this moment right here, right? And there's so much on the line, and that final shot by Aronofsky, it's like, oh, it's so good. If you've never seen it, I don't want to give away this moment, because
No,
as it
it'll ruin
culminates
it
to
for
this
you.
final beat, oh my god, it's like exhilarating when the credits hit. It's the saddest, most, hey, but that's a beautiful way for this character ultimately what could potentially play out. That is his journey. It's like
Yeah,
such great passion and heartache on screen, but Rourke's performance so good. And
it
it's an
was.
awesome Mickey Rourke
Go on.
film that not a lot of people know about, because we talked about Michael Cimino last year. If you've not seen him in, what is it, The Year of the Dragon, is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
yeah, I
That's a
think it
great
is.
movie. That
I haven't
is, if
seen
you have
that in a
not.
minute. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a
Year of the
while.
Dragon by Michael Cimino. It's actually a pretty solid film considering post Heaven's Gate, when his career definitely changed. There's so many like core Michael Cimino moments in this film. Highly recommend going to see it. But Mickey Rourke, he's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, I click and right. This is my bit, and I'm not giving anything away here. But we start after having just been in that elementary school. As he's driving around, he's got this. See if I've got it on here, because I definitely do. Right? If I scrim back really quickly. All right. Yeah, he's got this on his dashboard, which is him with his arms in the air. It's his sort of action figure that he had from when he was a wrestler. And when you watch that, in fact, I put it a picture within picture down here. Right? There's the, I'd say, penultimate shot of the whole film. This is just it's just glorious. The way that it's framed and everything like that. When we just talked about Wuthering Heights and that use of the crossfade and everything like that, I mean, this film really does have it all. It's a beautiful film, and it finishes with this fantastic song written by Bruce Springsteen, who's one of my favorites. That's called The Wrestler, and we put it on our Instagram this week, just as a kind of like a teaser for us doing this. But it's just one of the coolest endings, and what it just cuts into this song, and it's glorious. I think that this is arguably one of the best films ever made,
I would
and
agree.
something that everybody pushes to try and emulate. And whoever said it is right. Mickey Rourke. I mean, like this apparently Nicolas Cage was considered for this role before Mickey Rourke read for it. Mickey Rourke
Wow.
was down and out. Nobody was casting him in anything. And then he did this, and it absolutely blew. Yeah, Google it, Sweeney, so I'm not giving out false info. But I think it was. Nick Cage was considered for the role of Randy the Ram, right? and I'm so glad that this went to Mickey
Hulk
Rourke
Hogan
because
claimed he was offered the role of Randy the Ram. Then Hogan claimed he turned down
claims
the
a
role
lot.
because he left. Yeah, I mean, who knows if there's any. And then Aronofsky publicly disputed this, stating that Hogan was never considered and that Mickey Rourke was his only choice for this role. So, speaking to the Nick Cage, I'm not sure.
No, I mean, I'm glad
Yeah.
he wasn't, because that now we get things like Pig, which could have been on the list as well. It should have been on the list, but I chose against it for some stupid reason. But Pig, we get movies like that.
Oh my
and,
god, Pig will
from
be
Nick
on the
Cage.
next 6. We're going to be doing a lot of these 6 films. Pig,
Yeah,
if you haven't seen that, I'm going to speak about it at another time. But that film is like one of the best of
It
this,
is.
like the current decade that we're in.
it is. And he's got a new movie that's going to be coming out soon, which I was asked to write taglines
Robin Hood.
for the movie poster. No, the Robin Hood was
Oh,
Heath Ledger, isn't it? Death of the Robin Hood, or Death of Robin Hood, or whatever it's called.
yeah, that's the one
A24.
he
Was
directed
Nick
that.
Cage
Yeah.
in that?
No,
Oh,
he's doing
Nick
2
Cage.
big movies. He has the Death of Robin Hood coming out this year. I'll pull it up
No,
and
he's got
then he also.
Madden coming out, which is the one that I was asked to write taglines.
Oh wait, who are you
And,
talking about?
Nick Cage.
Oh, I was talking
Who
about
are you
the
thinking
director.
of? Oh, you're thinking of Darren Aronofsky.
The director for Pig.
Oh, which is
Yeah.
what's his name? The guy who did Pig.
Michael Sarnowski.
Sarnowski. Exceptional.
Yeah. Yeah, the wrestler's good. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite. As I said, a brilliant film, and if you've not seen it, just chuck it on. It's a fantastic film. Marissa Tomei as well, unbelievable in it, and she's good in everything. She was good in My Cousin Vinny. She's been good in lots of other awesome movies. But yeah, she's fantastic in this. Everybody, like you said, is top notch. So my choice, Sweeney, to talk about for whatever it was, half an hour, was The Wrestler. And now your turn. Convince us of what movies we should go and see that you've come up with.
Absolutely. So this is actually a 10 out of 10 for me. So I'm going to pull up IMDb just so you guys can see. So if you have not heard of Le Haine, which is Hate in French by Matthew Kassovitz, this is a film that came out in 1995. The short synopsis or logline, if you will, and then I'll read the full one. 24 hours in the lives of 3 young men in the French suburbs the day after a violent riot. And before we even go deeper into this movie, I really want to talk about the perspective of why I like it from just an audience member, and then the perspective of what I took away from it as a filmmaker. Because this film, if you have not seen it, like every movie we're going to talk about tonight, highly, highly, highly recommend. This is an awesome modern day. Well, it's 90s now, so we're pretty far removed from this from being modern day, but more developed civilization, post-industrial movement. This is the 90s France. 90s, just a great period for cinema altogether. I was actually thinking about this today, Chris, and a lot of my movies, I think all of them, minus my my special pick, the one that we haven't listed, are all 90s movies. And I was thinking about this today. I think the 90s, if I had to pick one decade for being my favorite decade of cinema, it would be the 90s. And that's against things like the 1970s, which you could say just has some of the best films ever made, director-driven productions. But I think in particular, the 90s just had some of the most potent pieces of cinema. And I was curious if, before I get further into Le Haine, if you had a favorite decade in cinema.
You know what? I might go with you on the 90s. It was when I first fell in love with movies. However, it was 99, wasn't it? The Matrix. I think The Matrix was when I started changing the way I watched films. You know what I mean? Before then, it was always like, I think my first date was The Mummy. Brendan Fraser. You know what I mean? So whenever that was my first date. I think I was, right? And I remember going seeing Jurassic Park with my gran about 10 times. I remember going seeing Titanic 97. I was 11 years old. I was too young for it in the UK, so I had to go with my gran. And believe me, when you see your first naked woman with your gran next to you, right, in Kate Winslet, that is the longest time of my life, right? Was that moment in Titanic, but I loved it. So yeah, I'd say the 90s as well. However, I have to say, I mean, like
2000s is the second best, and
2000s
granted,
was good.
these were two that we particularly lived through. I mean, I was born 93, so I wasn't completely aware of, like, all of the movies at the time, but
Yeah,
looking back
you
and
were going to
watching
the cinema
cinema.
in the 2000s.
Yeah, I think I was going the first. I mean, I went to movies pretty young, but the first ones that were really like soaked into my brain was around 98, 99. Seeing things like the movies you just talked about. I watched, I mean, there's so many movies. I was watching movies from like Braveheart. I mean, let me just rack off some of the movies from the
Rack 'em
90s so
off,
people
mate.
can get a pulse of what came out in this decade. So we had Schindler's List. Some would argue potentially Spielberg's best, or at least up there in the top five. American Beauty, Sam Mendes, which I know we're going to be talking about another of his films tonight. Shawshank Redemption, Frank Darabont, which honestly, like, not my favorite films, but I know people really love those. Pulp
I love that
Fiction,
movie.
Braveheart, The Silence of the Lambs, Goodfellas, Unforgiven, Forrest Gump. And this is more like American cinema. We're not even
It's
tapping
top
into
notch,
foreign
man.
cinema, like Dances with Wolves, Fargo, The Sixth Sense, The Matrix, The Usual Suspects, which sucks. I hate that movie, hot take, but I cannot stand that movie. And I mean, no
Is
one
it
should
because
really
Chris
like Brian.
McQuarrie wrote it?
It's just maybe it's because I watched too many movies, but by like the first frame, I watched this really late in my life, and without
Mm.
going down the rabbit hole, it was just too obvious what the outcome of that movie was going to be. But Fight Club, Seven, Fincher on Fire, we have, oh my God,
I
Terminator
mean,
2, which we talked about, even just for Disney, Beauty and the Beast, which is an ultimate slammer of a
what year was
animated
that?
movie, 1991.
91.
Yeah,
I
which is
mean,
crazy.
that was a 24-year-old lad, right? Who this is a bit of trivia for you for Beauty and the Beast. A 24-year-old lad was the one who animated Belle and the Beast dancing in that massive
Dude.
ballroom. He was the one, like 24 years old. Unbelievable.
Dude, I mean,
You
it's
know?
great filmmaking. Beauty and the
Mm-hmm.
Beast. Saint and Tango came out in 1994. Bellatar, rest in peace, dude. What a G, 94. I mean, think of Lars von Trier in the 90s. Think of Christopher Nolan just starting out in the 90s. So many of the
Mm-hmm.
filmmakers we love today, the 90s was a birthing ground. Princess Mononoke by Miyazaki
When was
came out
Heat?
in the 90s. Heat
95.
was in the 90s. Yeah, it had to have been. Scent of a
95, mate.
Woman. That's funny that this is on this list. That movie also sucks. I don't care what anyone says about that. That's like Al
You don't,
Pacino at his worst.
you don't like him playing a blind guy and saying, hey, you
No.
guys, F you too. No?
I love my brother-in-law. He's going to
Hoo-ah.
hate me because I think he really loved Scent of a Woman, but that was one film that I did not love.
It's got a cult following, mate. It really does.
But
There was
going
also in
back,
the 90s,
yeah.
mate, in the 90s as well, just let me just add to that. There were some comedies that were just exceptional comedies. You know what I mean? Like, that couldn't be made nowadays. You know what I mean? I think. Like, you were getting these brilliant 90-minuters that were coming out, like Liar Liar, I think was a really good one, and things like that. I mean, they've even got Man in the Moon here. Jim Carrey did a bunch. He did Ace Ventura. Like, he did, like, there was some top-notch 90s films that were comedies
Oh,
that
yeah.
were coming out. As I said, following on from, well, I mean, dude, even, what was it? Home Alone was 91, wasn't it? 1990, 1991.
American cinema was on fire in television. Like, the American
Amazing.
dream for what it was live and well in the 90s. Let's just put it that way. Like, there was such
True.
an Age of Innocence, another Scorsese film from the 90s, but there really was. We were like in between just, what was it? Desert Storm and just the political tension, but there was also this American prosperity that was kind of refound in some capacity, depending on your life, of course, was found in the 90s. We had shows like Full House, Friends, the sitcom television was very pronounced at that time. It was a really great time for entertainment, which brings me back to Lahane, because I think Lahane is one of the best examples of how good auteur style 90s cinema filmmaking was. And Matthew Kasovitz, who has gotten to have a very interesting career. This was one of his earlier films. He did before this. He hasn't done that many movies, and I hope to see him do a couple of more films, considering what he did with Lahane. I feel like he never rose back to the heights of this film. But before that, he did this film Matisse, which was super popular in France. And Lahane was an interesting production because it was really hard for him to actually get funding for this film. And if you have the Criterion collection um, of this, which I do highly recommend, if you want to watch this movie, grab Criterion collection version of this film. There's an awesome, I think it's 10 years later, Jodie Foster does a interview with Criterion about that film in particular, and her being a French citizen as well and going between, France and the United States at that time to visit family. There was a lot of tension that was building up with a
Mm.
lot of the kind of what's it called? Like militarized police state, the stuff that was ultimately building up inside France as well as at the time. This was also being seen in the United States, and there was a lot of kind of like playbooks being shared, and there was a lot of tension between the classes and especially those that didn't have a lot of money. And Matthew Kasovitz essentially wanted to document this experience of what it was like growing up in the French ghetto. And there's a specific name for what that was called in France. But Matthew, if you look at his work at this time, he didn't have a lot of films going on like before this. And this film was about to make a massive splash at Cannes that year. I want to say it
Sure.
was the 1995 or 1996 Cannes is essentially when this came out. And it was hard for him to get money, one, because of the subject matter, which I'll speak to here in a moment, and also because he wanted to shoot this film on black and white, which I've heard that originally they shot it on color and then turned it black and white. I'm not sure where that ultimately fell with the historical context of what the
Mm.
production was like, but it was a really interesting film. And to go back to, now that you know a little bit about the director, I'll read the general summary for this. Is this the one that I want to use? Yeah. So I thought I had another one, but I'll just go with this one. Reviewers say Lahane is celebrated for its raw depiction of social issues in the Parisian suburbs, tackling themes like racism, police brutality. Its black and white cinematography and intense performances, especially by Vincent Cassel, are highly praised. The film's bold narrative and social relevance resonate strongly through some of the critics. And here's actually what I wanted to read, the storyline. This film
Mm.
follows three young men and their time spent in the French suburban ghetto over a span of 24 hours. So this film, if you've never seen it, and for those that have can remember, it's very in medias res. There's a lot of energy in this movie, and that's something in particular I really love how this film handles this one, the introduction of a lot of characters in a short amount of time. You
Mm.
essentially start in this world where it opens with this almost like documentary scroll montage of riots and the tension happening in Paris at this time. And to my understand, Kasovitz, he wrote this script or started writing the script and came up with this idea on the day of a very public killing of a police officer and a young gentleman in the ghetto, which I'll reference here in a second. So this film was kind of birthed out of this pressure pot tension that was boiling underneath, especially the French suburban or Paris suburban, like lower income, like culture, right? And this
Mm.
is following these people essentially. We have Vinz, a Jew, Sahid, an Arab, and Hubert, a black boxer, who've grown up in these French suburbs where high levels of diversity coupled with the racist and oppressive police force has raised tensions to a critical breaking point. During the riots that took place the night before, an officer loses his handgun in the ensuing madness, only to leave it for Vin's to find. Now, with the newfound meanings to gain the respect he deserved, Vince vows to kill a cop if his friends Abdel dies in the hospital due to the beating he received while in a police custody. So, this film, immediately you're introduced to these characters, this world, this almost kind of like apartment block that they all live in the suburbs of Paris. And ultimately, like we find in this storyline, Vince finds this gun, becomes kind of the core motivating factor of this whole film, as there was this awful beating between a cop and someone that they knew in their community, and riots are breaking out. And they essentially go on this road trip, this road film through the night with this gun, having different encounters with people in their community, people with money. And it's a really fascinating piece. And I've watched it with a
Yes.
couple of different people now, and it's honestly in the likes of and you mentioned him earlier with most recent Marty Supreme or Uncut Gems, it has that very like high octane,
I'd agree.
everyone's upset, everyone's yelling, the conversation, the dialogue super snappy. And from that standpoint, I even think this film does better than what Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie were trying to do in their films with this financial urgency. And their perspective is a little bit different. In their movies, there's always this financial component, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
Uncut Gems in the gem in that film or Marty Supreme just trying to get money to be able to make to that trip to Japan. Theirs is always motivated and a little bit different. In this, it's very documentary in the way that they're trying to see these characters navigate what is ultimately this class tension, this police tension, this racist tension that is blooming in the suburban culture. And the film is just so well done. And I don't know the last time you saw it, Chris. When do you remember when you last saw this movie?
Right after you talked to me about it, probably 2019, 2020, like when we were talking, because I think you mentioned this one to me, and then I went and watched it, and I found all this great BTS of it. I mean, I've watched it before that, but like,
Hmm.
yeah. But when you mentioned it to me, it was one of those where I was like, oh, I've got to go and watch this movie again. And you're right. I think that first one I was watching it, and it was all this black and white. I was thinking, oh, what is it like French New Wave or something like that? You know what I mean? But yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it as a movie. You know,
Yeah, and
and then
I'm curious if, yeah,
go
go
on.
for it. Sorry.
I was going to
I was
say
just
even
going to,
that starting shot. I think we've got a delay. That starting shot where he's coming over his back and going into the mirror. You know what I mean? It's been replicated so many times, but it's like this. I think this is the first time we saw doing it. You know what I mean? Tell me if I'm wrong, guys.
this
But
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, that shot, I remember the first time I saw it. The way I saw this in
great.
film school back in 2012,
Mm.
2013, that shot was the film school example of what you can do with camera. And I remember, shout out Professor Claude Osteen. He was a G, went to NYU Asia, was taught by like Todd Solondz, worked with Martin Scorsese. Awesome. He is a great example of an awesome educator, and I think it's super important just to have like a quick aside stand on my like Apple box moment that
Mm.
it is important to speak your passion about movies. This is partially why Chris and I do this. It's because
True.
you want to be inspired by those that came before you and appreciate cinema. And Claude was such an awesome educator for sharing the knowledge of movies with others at Pittsburgh Filmmakers. And more than ever, I feel like what makes filmmakers great is their appreciation for the art form and obviously their abilities to be able to craft and tell stories. But I just want to say that's something that I want to see more people is the excitement of cinema and doing this type of stuff and talking about films because it goes a really long way. But
Does
nonetheless, like that shot that you said with that intro where we see you can't tell if we're looking through a mirror and then it's a double. It's this like right here
it's
where
great.
Vincent Castle's looking at the mirror. It's a great shot, and I highly recommend if you don't remember this, go back to it. We don't have the
If you want,
video obviously to play, but yeah.
if you want another cool mirror shot, just randomly since we're talking mirror shots, yeah, like this is brilliant. It's all in camera, so no CGI or anything like this on this. That's what's brilliant about this one. We literally go over a double's back into the mirror that's Vincent Cassell looking back at him, which is awesome. But another cool mirror shot is the one from Contact, which I think was like 97. And that was that kid running up the stairs, and then she runs around the corner, and then she runs up and closes the mirror door, and then we come out of it into the real world from the mirror world. It's like, what the hell? Yeah, this one. I'm sure
Which
there's a
one?
video online of it, but this blonde-haired kid in Contact, there's a shot where she runs up the stairs and yeah, kind of closes the mirror door, and we follow her all the way up the stairs like ahead of her,
Mhm.
and then it pulls back, and then she pushes. That's it. There, you see the one where she's in the yellow jacket. Right, this whole shot, Sweeney, is her running up the stairs. Like if you click on that one that you just passed over, then right,
This one?
is her, yeah, click on that one and then just move along too. So click to the right too, right? So that one and then this one. So we follow her all the way up the stairs and then she closes the mirror. And then you're in the real world and you're like, what the? Like that was all, how the hell did they do that? Pull back through the mirror to her hand. It's nuts. It's a great shot. And I would highly
Yeah.
recommend it. If anybody wants to Google that or type it in on YouTube, you'll find it and you'll go, how is this possible? And I still don't know how it was done. I'll always wonder. Contact. But yeah, back to Lahane, Sweeney.
No, it's just that's a great example of like the amazing cinematography that's in this movie. So if there's
True.
things that I want to like speak to what I took away as a filmmaker, obviously this movie's great. As an audience member, I love the dynamic of these characters. I love the, young adult male energy that is in these scenes and in these sequences. There's a really awesome sequence where they're all on a rooftop and Saeed that's how you would say his name, right?
I think
Saeed.
so, yeah. Saeed,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, is eating a hot dog, and it's this like angst that men have at that age, and they're all speaking over each other and kind of beating each other up and verbally roughhousing. But there's also this tension that's boiling over with the police problem that's ultimately happening in these suburbs. And like I said early on, this film does such a good job of introducing characters without having to give a lot of context in their background. You can almost feel it in the fabric of their identity, the way that they hold themselves, the clothing that they choose to wear, the way they speak to one another. You see this constant hierarchy with Vince kind of being the leader of the group and Saeed wanting to be this one that, you know, is very cocky and is always trying to do things to push the envelope. And then we have Hubert, which is this boxer who really wants to focus on his career and also like be out of the like, he also knows just with the like tension that's happening and considering what his background is and who he is, he doesn't want to get caught up in the crossfire. He's someone that it seems like he's been burnt or at least has experience of when things boil over, you don't necessarily want to be the one that gets caught. So he's trying to stay out of it. And Vince is this one that's really the hothead and pushing the needle and the one that ultimately finds the gun. But from a filmmaking standpoint, what I love so much about Lahane is the way that these characters were written feels so authentic and they all have their own perspective and their own like the way that they interact with this world or interact with the other characters. There's an awesome degree of separation between all of the characters, but the way that they all hang out with each other, talk, and I believe that there was a certain level of improvisation that they did. But even considering that, if it is improv, the detail and the authenticity of that improv was awesome. And to my understanding, Cassavetes, he lived in these neighborhoods, I think one specific neighborhood in particular, for 3 months with the key crew being the actors and I believe the writer, just to be able to understand what it was like being in this day to day life of these people living in the Parisian ghettos. And you feel that level of authenticity. He really wanted to tell the story of the plight of some of these individuals and also their ignorance, when in these like very impactful cultural moments. And I just think that the film operates on so many levels with having something to say, but is also this really great story. And we see these just amazing frames. If there's one thing in particular that I love of the most about this movie, is its shot selection, its sequencing, the way that it flips here. You start with the gunshot going off, I believe is the sound that cuts to Saeed's character with his eyes closed as he's almost in this daze, to see his perspective flip to seeing cops holding the line here to what looks like a potential riot just happened the night before. You know what I mean? There's a really great consideration of what they're trying to show, the imagery that helps build out this world. And the scope of the movie is not huge, but at the same time, you feel so much of Paris at that time and what these characters are going through. And even this is like an awesome scene at the beginning where this gentleman's like yelling out the window at Saeed, and he's this ancillary character, very funny, kind of a comedic moment where we see these two guys butt heads. He's up in his tower speaking down to him. Saeed's this man kind of giving him shit back. And I love the dynamic of these characters in this movie. And it feels like my childhood when I was in, early 2000s living in New Jersey. Shout out to my friends, Ryan Appleby, Evan. We had a rambunctious crew. Obviously, we never had any of these problems. I would say it was a lot more like that Rob Reiner film with all of the kids. What's it called?
Stand By Me.
Yeah, like Stand By Me. It's kind of like fun kid stuff, even though that movie's kind of like sad, but
at least we didn't say Mystic
Lahane,
River.
yeah, yeah, my life's like Mystic River. But Lahane is just, I don't know if people have that same experience if you've watched it, but it reminds me of what it was like to be a kid, be kind of bullish, but also just a great story of where it ultimately goes. I don't know,
I
what are your
love some of
thoughts,
those.
Chris?
Some of those rooftop perspectives are good. I don't know if they've got any, but I'm sure they'll have them on the shot deck because it's great for this. But those ones where we're looking down them and they're like rats in a maze, I always think those are great for showing this Parisian. It's not the ghetto, but you know what I mean, like this Parisian sort of
Yeah.
immigrant communities, and you just see how France treats its immigrants. I think that right now we're in this turning point in the world. Right now, I mean, like my country in the UK they've made immigration a hot topic. The same is being done here in the US, and the same is being done with countries all across Europe, and it's very, very difficult right now. If you watch this film, it gives you a bloody good perspective as to what they're going through and the way they're treated. You know what I mean? The characters like Hubert, who are coming through what is, quite a racist place to live. You know what I mean? Saeed, the
Yeah.
same kind of thing. The way that Muslims are treated in that country. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's very, even though it's like what 95, it's very poignant, or 97, whatever it was, Sweeney. It's very
Yeah.
poignant still. I'd also say as well, like, I love the concept of time in this movie. The
Mhm.
timestamps, the frequent clicking. There's the like heartbeats that are like major part of the soundtrack, aren't they? If I remember correctly. Um,
Yeah.
and I love that. It kept the tension up right the way through. And like you said, it's very kind of uncut gems, good times, Safdie Brothers, early Safdie Brothers stuff that's just constant pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. Other shot, which I'll say is one of the most famous ones in this, and I used it in the Instagram,
Mhm.
was that amazing dolly zoom where it's literally like, yes, Spielberg can do one with one guy on a beach, learning that there's a shark in the water. This one's done on, what is it, above the Champs-Elysees, and they literally pull all three of them. Like it becomes incredibly claustrophobic the way that he does it. It's amazing.
Yeah,
One
that
of the
shot
coolest dolly
here.
zooms of all time. I love it.
Do you see that shot here? It is here, I saw it.
I could have
Um
sworn I saw it as we passed through.
Oh, it's this one. Yes, he
That
does
one.
like the Zolly. If you haven't seen this, like Chris said, he's almost like compressing the image and elongated as he pushes in, he's zooming out, or vice versa. And it's a really awesome shot. This was
It's a
another
great
one,
shot.
again, that everyone talked about in film school, just being an awesome example of what you can do with imagery to help tell the story, the mental space, what is ultimately going on with these characters. And even like your
Mm,
first example, this is just a great character story. It's
it
a
is.
really good character story, and I think that's what's so awesome about the '90s in particular, is it was a time for really awesome character stories, and yeah, there's so much to say about this movie, but the cinematography, the black and white, and I'd be curious, I don't know if anyone knows, maybe they can research this and drop this in the comments if they actually shot this film in color and then chose to make it black and white, but it's just a great look from
Yeah,
start to
do
finish.
that research because it would interest me as to why they chose to go black. Why do you think that he chose to go black and white with this? Do
I
you
thought
think
I
it's to
read
show how
something.
gritty and raw it is, or what's your thoughts?
I'm not sure. Maybe it's the documentary perspective, this feeling of black and white. I don't know. I'm not sure what he's going for with the black and white,
Hmm.
but it works for me. I couldn't see this movie in color. Maybe it's this almost commentary too on like just news and media. But even back then, a lot of things were in color. It wasn't like we were in that era
Mm.
where stuff was being delivered in black and white. I'd be
Was it to
curious if
try and
anyone
do you
has any
think
insight.
maybe to simplify it as well, maybe to show that it is a black and white issue? You know what I mean? Effectively. I don't mean to be very kind of punny on that, but that was my thought. I questioned this when I knew you were picking this one. I thought, what does color take away from the black and white? What does having it
Hmm.
in color take away from the black and white? One of my friends, Jen, is a producer, and she produced a movie called 40-Year-Old Version, not Virgin, Version, um, which is like a comedy. And the director campaigned like to have it black and white, which was going to cost more. And apparently, streaming services. This one was for Netflix. Apparently, streaming services they request color. They don't allow artistic representation or anything like this, and try and go for a black and white. They really desperately wanted things to be in color, and she had to fight for it with Netflix apparently to get this thing in black and white. And I always wondered about that. I was like, well, what does having it in color take away, as opposed to just having it in black and white? You know?
I love black and white cinema, but here's what I
Mm.
did find, and this is something that Again, this is research. We were not on this production, so we don't always 100% know, but
Mm,
they said it was shot in color, released in black and white. The film was originally shot in color, but Matthew Cassavetes changed it to black and white in post-production. A color
mm,
re-release was planned in case the original failed at the box office, but it
mm,
didn't need it. The black and white look, and I don't know if this is ultimately what he was going for, but someone referenced, was to give it that almost prison-like timeless quality that sometimes, which I'll admit, to speak to the timeless part, when you think of shows like Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone, I think there's a reason why when you watch a show that started as late as the 1950s and ran through the 60s, I love that episodic
mm,
television show. One of my
mm,
favorites, and I think partially why it still feels so pertinent. Of course, the writing and what they were able to pull off storytelling wise, the Cold War tension, but the black
mm.
and white does allow you to at least have that timeless quality. And to speak to what they're saying here, this prison like quality, again, I don't know if Cassavetes actually said that or if that was in
Mhm.
an interview. I could see that playing into it, you know?
Yeah. Either way, I mean, brave to go with French cinema for your first pick, but I- I'm a big fan. I mean, there's another film that I was going to mention when you got beautiful shot. There was another film I was going to mention when you picked this one, which was, have you seen Un Prophet?
Let me look.
Type
Prophet.
that one in. That was recommended to me by my friend Jen. Uh, UNE space PRO. I mean, a prophet. I'm sure that it would be translation of in
Prophet.
there, but yeah. Give that a
I have
watch.
not
We'll
seen
we'll
this.
we'll cover this in a future one because I nearly put it on my list. In fact, I sent you a picture of it, the lighter scene. But yeah,
Amelia
it's
Perez director, everyone's favorite film from 2024.
definitely worth a watch, mate. I
Another
mean,
provocateur.
oof, yeah. Emilia Perez wasn't my favorite, but this one's definitely got something. It's a good film. I'd give it a watch. We'll talk about it in a
Yeah.
future episode, I'm sure. I won't get dragged off this too much. But yeah, French film, give it a look. He's
Yeah.
loved though, the guy who directed this. And what's your man who's done Lahane moved on to? What's he done since?
He
What other
hasn't done
things has
too
he?
much. He went on to
Mm,
direct Gothica, which, if you guys remember that film, was it with Halle
never
Berry
seen it.
or Jennifer Lopez? He's
Okay.
actually more of an actor than he is a director now, which, not that that's a bummer. I mean, maybe that's where his
Mm,
heart ultimately took him, but I want to see him come back because his films after this, Gothica 2003, not too great of a film, unfortunately. Actually had a
mm,
pretty stacked cast: Halle Berry, Robert Downey Jr., Penelope Cruz. I would be
mm,
curious to revisit this. I saw this when it came out, but I don't remember really liking it. It was a rental at the time when like Blockbusters was huge. But then he also did this film, which I've never seen, with Vin Diesel, that I think a lot of people can remember, that also was unfortunately not pretty well received. 26 out of 100, 5.5 out of 10. Babylon AD. Michelle Yeoh's in this, interesting enough, so good for her.
Have you seen
Never
the
watched.
you seen the trailer for the new Michelle Yeoh Sean Baker movie? Just on that.
Oh, I have not. I didn't even know that that got released.
Mate, there is a trailer out and Michelle Yeoh plays all the parts. And
What
it's
is
the
it
latest
called? The
Sean
Legend
Baker.
of.
No, no, it's not called The Legend of Neja. It's got an S. That might be it. Sandiwara. That's the one.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's
oh, it's
Michelle
like a
Yeoh
short
playing
film.
multiple parts, and it's Sean Baker's next thing after winning the Oscar. Yeah.
I know that he also wrote that one film. I think it was the Thai film. I don't know if you've seen that,
Okay.
The Left-Handed Girl or something like that. That's supposedly
No,
pretty
I've
good. He
seen the
didn't direct it.
seen the billboards
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Supposedly people say this is good. If anyone's seen it, drop that in the comments. Let us know.
He
But
is
yeah, man,
good,
my
Sean
first
Baker.
pick. Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
super good. And I'll say this much about Enora, and I don't want it to be a night of hot takes, but I'll give it my best shot. I
Do it.
liked Enora, but considering 2024 in comparison to 2025, if Enora were to have come out in 2025, I don't think that it would have gotten the acclaim that it would have, like, that it did the prior year. Not that that means that the film is not brilliant in his own right. I'm not even trying to get to that type of conversation, but
Mm.
2025 was such a stacked year that when I reflect back on 2024, I liked Enora. I think it would be good to revisit, but it's not a film in particular that I'm running back to see. You know what I mean?
No.
So
No, you're right. This year has
yeah.
been a lot more. I mean, it's like I always go to the latest year that I think has been so stacked, and it was 2019, and it was Parasite, it was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it was The Irishman, it was 1917, it was Licorice Pizza. Like, what a year for film that was. You know what I mean? I always go back to that, and I'm always now trying to compare every other year to it and seeing if it was better, because I think 2019 was arguably my favorite year for cinema. Oof, for the last 20
Ooh,
years. You know what I mean?
ooh, you know what's a really good year is 2015 or the year that Interstellar came out or
Yeah, that was
2014. Those 2 years are super stacked when you look at the awards and the movies that came out around this time. I mean, last decade was a really interesting year for independent cinema because we had
mm,
so many independent distribution and production companies and like these micro indie studios come out like A24. We had some that were really
Neon.
prominent and then
Yeah.
failed, like Green Street, Neon came out. Yeah. But Chris, for my first one, Lahane, I give it a 10 out of 10. Highly recommend if you've not seen this film. There's so much to say. Really awesome production, but definitely cross this off your watch list. Buy the physical on Criterion. Watch,
Yeah.
there's even a 10-year in the making documentary that I have not seen that is on my list now that I learned about today. Uh, just incredible piece of cinema. And even like one final thing that goes with Vincent Castles or Cassell, like how good he was as Vince. He was trying to play a teenager, someone later in their teens, and at the time he was 28, which is
Holy
crazy
moly.
casting. But he was very old for the part, but plays it so well.
He
It's
does.
incredible.
Am I back? Am I back, Sweeney? Am I still here?
Yeah, you're good.
We always get kicked. We always get kicked off these things. I don't know what happened then, but we're back.
Riverside is not the greatest. We're just gonna say that.
We don't mind. I mean, at the end of the day, we're back. We're still talking, and that's all we do it for, just for like the love of the game. And
Yeah.
speaking of the love of the game, this I know that Roger Deakins is arguably one of my favorites as well. I've got his books. I love Roger Deakins very much. British guy, just like me. So, home crowd and everything like that. We've talked about Lena Sangren, but for me, this guy is the guy. This is the greatest cinematographer. I love Gordon Willis as well. I love Robbie Mueller. I love them all. But for some reason, Conrad Hall is arguably my favorite cinematographer of all time. And maybe it goes back to when I saw some of his classics, Cool Hand Luke. Maybe it goes back to Butch Cassidy. But yeah, I mean, I think that this movie was the one that made me go, wow, no notes, the greatest looking movie I've ever seen in my life. And it got credits. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, like Road to Perdition, which is the movie we're talking about now, Sam Mendes, it got 6 Oscar nominations. It got 3 BAFTAs. It got 1 Golden Globe. It got an outstanding achievement in cinematography from the ASC for Conrad Hall. Paul Newman was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Thomas Newman, no relation to him, but was nominated for Best Score. And art direction was given from Dennis Gassner and Nancy Haigh, no relation. Were given, nominations for Best Art Direction and Best Costume, but it was, for some reason, it's not talked about enough. Like you said, it's been a bit since you've seen it. It's one of those where it kind of gets lost amongst the weeds of everything else that we're getting hit with on streaming and everything like this. And I think that if it's not in Criterion Collection, which I don't think it is, it
I don't
should
think
be,
so.
because it's one of the best gangster movies of all time. I really put it up there with Goodfellas, with Irishman, with all the Scorseses, with Once Upon a Time in New York, all of those. I really think in America, sorry, right? I really think it's one of the greatest, and my reasoning is sound. You know what I mean? Because Conrad Hall, his shots are just spectacular. The lighting of them is amazing. I mean, I'd love to hear Shane's take on these, but like shots like this, shot from the perspective of the kid in the film, watching his dad, who is an assassin for the mob in sort of 1950s Chicago, doing a hit like early on in the film. You know what I mean? These shots are just spectacular. And Conrad Hall worked with my father-in-law at one point, which is the greatest story I've got. My father-in-law used to make he used to shoot adverts for like Nike and different companies. And Conrad Hall directed one of the adverts, and was on it when he was later in life, a bit older, right after, a little bit after Road to Perdition. And yeah, like the stories that my father-in-law would tell me about the way that Conrad Hall sets up shots and things just blew me away, and I've always loved this film for that reason. I loved American Beauty that he shot with Sam Mendes as well. I thought that was one of the most beautifully shot movies. But yeah, there's something about this movie that I will always just chuck on, and it's like the framing here. Let me see if I've got the best shot. Yeah, like shots like this. The movie itself, if I can just go into that quickly, then the movie itself, Paul Newman, who is I haven't got the picture of him right now, but Paul Newman, his character is called John Rooney, and he's basically the head of the mob. All right, or he's one of the mob bosses, and Michael Sullivan, who's Tom Hanks' character right next to him here, he loves him like a son. He treats him like a son. He is like an assassin for the mob, and the only person that John Rooney truly trusts is Michael Sullivan. And that's very bad for Daniel Craig, who's this guy here, right? Who is actually John Rooney's real son, who is kind of overlooked and never really respected. And he's always kind of like the Joaquin Phoenix in The Gladiator, and Paul Newman is like Marcus Aurelius, and this is like Maximus, like this kind of fatherly bond with somebody who's not his real son, as opposed to his real son, is heartbreaking. But when you see shots like this with Conrad Hall, just these long focus shots where we actually have the main character here out of focus, just really kind of yeah, it made me fall in love with this film. I'd say there's another one where he's smoking. Let me see if I've got it here. Yeah, this shot. This is the first shot we have of Daniel Craig's character, and it's just a cigarette that's been lit, and we're seeing this smoke in the black darkness. And I've done this, and I just absolutely adore this shot. I absolutely love the cinematography of this film, and it's always been, yeah, for that reason, it's one of my favorite films of all time. This shot, which is one of the coolest shots here, is right after Daniel Craig has killed Michael Sullivan's family. And when he comes out, there's this kind of shock moment because we wonder if he's seen the youngest kid, Michael Sullivan, like coming home, and he hasn't. In fact, he's just looking at a reflection of himself in the mirror. And then we have these cool sort of dark lit shots of him, these silhouettes that we've got right here of him sort of hiding out in the shadows. I just love it. I think it's brilliant. We have a really cool shot as well, if we're going down the shot list thing, shots like this in the train station where everybody's sitting reading the papers, and you've got Michael Sullivan just sitting in amongst them in the middle right here, and the driving shots, the car shots are cool as hell. Like I love my car driving shots. I love them. That's one of the reasons why I love One Battle After Another. Like I loved that ocean waves road scene at the end. It's absolutely amazing, right? In the same way, Sam Mendes, the way he directs these shots that are on this old sort of 1950s car, 1930s car, whatever you call it, right? This one here, right? And then from the side of the car, and then you have another shot which is like above the car if I've got it, but I can't find it. But yeah, like these shots are just absolutely stunning. This shot of Chicago, this big wide, is just brilliant. You know what I mean? They've shut down one of the main bridges in Chicago. That's literally right in the center. You can see the river when they turn it green. They literally film it off this bridge. So it's one of the most important streets in Chicago. They managed to shut that down to shoot this diner they bought for like $6,000. Somebody will find the trivia on that and say it's $2,000 or whatever, but I thought it was $6,000. But they bought this in the middle of nowhere to shoot the scene where Michael Sullivan meets Jude Law's character. This scene here, I put out on our Instagram because it's like, this is the scene that made me go, whoa, this is one of the coolest films of all time. Like literally the point where John Rooney, as I said, the Paul Newman character, is walked out by all of his entourage, all of his men, outside O'Neill's pub. And in fact, in the script, this is set in a boxing in a boxing hall, and this is where John Rooney's killed. But in our movie, in the movie, it's outside in the rain that's brilliantly lit. And Sweeney, like this, there's stuff on Filmmakers Academy right now. I think that they did it with Shane did it on.
Into the Badlands.
into
Hmm.
Badlands, and he shot this rain scene where this samurai guy's like going around, there's blades flashing, everything like that. Incredibly cool. If you told me he wasn't inspired by Conrad Hall in this scene right now, I'd have disbelieved you. But I mean, Shane might have done it around about the same time, if not earlier. In which case, I'd disagree with myself. But yeah, like that again is, one of the coolest shots, and Shane shot that one as well. But yeah,
I
Paul
love these
Newman right
gifts
here.
that you have.
Right, you like it? I've still got the rain, but it's because, dude, the way that he lit the rain, just like this, so you can actually see it. Every little bit of detail is just so perfectly done. And this is one of the coolest shots. This bit here that I've made into a GIF as well. Like, this was like a big dolly in a semicircle that moved around, where we can actually see Paul Newman's character right here, just realizing that he's been got when all of his men are getting offed. You know what I mean? And then you just move in on his face after that. It's just such a great shot, this dolly shot right here, round in a semicircle. And Sam Mendes, man, like, I absolutely love him. I love the fact that he has worked with this guy. He's worked with uh, Deakins on Skyfall and 1917. And, like, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to the Beatles movies, the four of them, because whoever he's got shooting them, and I don't know who it is, I'm looking forward to it.
I think
This is
Linus
where
is
it
shooting the Beatles
is it
movies.
Linus?
I think
Amazing.
it is.
I can't wait. I'm in. I'm sold. And this is a behind the scenes which I found. Sorry, it's not a better quality. There's not an awful lot of behind the scenes shots from Road to Perdition, but this is the behind the scenes. If you want to see how Conrad Hall did it, here it is, and it's amazing. Like, there's the light above. Here's the semicircular track, and you can see the setting it all up. And there's Paul Newman's character. By the way, gotta say before I forget, Paul Newman's final movie, non-animated, I mean, because he did do Cars after this as a voice. But Paul Newman's final movie, In the Flesh, and Conrad Hall's final movie. And he got a posthumous cinematography award for this because it was so good. I mean, again, I've got another gif on you here, Sweeney. We see his face. Look at the way it's lit. This kind of like covered up eyes and stuff like this. Very Godfather, very Gordon Willis-esque. You know what I mean? I can't believe that I mentioned gangster movies before and didn't mention The Godfather, but I'll throw that one in now. And again, when we flip to Michael's perspective, when we see this silhouette of the gun, I'll say this, Sweeney. One of the things that I've not mentioned so far is that this whole movie was based on a graphic novel, right? And the graphic novel was named. I've got it saved down here. Oh yeah, it's by Max Allan Collins. All right, Road to Perdition. And this scene here, the way it's shot, the way it looks, and everything like that, looks so graphic novel based. And one thing that they're doing right now in Hollywood, one of my friends is a screenwriter. I consider myself a screenwriter. They're saying to screenwriters, make this into a graphic novel first, so we can see, the idea, so that you can present it in that way. So there's a lot of friends of mine who are screenwriters who are now, and I think you got told this as well, who are literally being told, hey, get this converted into a graphic novel, or scenes of it into a graphic novel. Design that so that way you can pitch that, because they, producers don't have time to read. They want to see something visual. They want to see ideas and stuff like that. So you're effectively storyboarding your own movie. But yeah, that's one of the things that people are being told, and that's certainly how Sam Mendes pitched this. He took it from the graphic novel and put it into being. And if you look at things like 300, they did the same kind of thing, using graphic novels as a basis for making a film off of. You read a lot of graphic novels as well, don't you, Sweeney?
Oh yeah. I mean, right now there's just so many people interested in stuff like anime, and you're seeing a lot of the youth really look at stories and consume stories through manga. So it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense, and it's not a surprise considering how many modern movies that we all love, whether it be Aronofsky's Black Swan, which has scenes pulled from Satoshi's Con Perfect Blue. We have
Mm-hmm.
Inception, Nolan's film, which has sequences that are clearly pulled and developed from Satoshi Kon's film Paprika. Anime is one of, and what's cool about anime or manga is that there's things cinematically you can do in both of those mediums that are really difficult to do in live action, like
Mm-hmm.
traditional narrative motion picture movies. And I think that's where a lot of these directors like Sam Mendes, Darren Aronofsky, Christopher Nolan, they get inspired by the way that these animators or graphic novel, I don't know, illustrators, the way that they sequence out and do shot to shot. If you've never spent time reading things like Berserk, which is a really great example of
Mm.
awesome graphic novel, or even just Neon Genesis, which is one that I like highly recommend, or just going through the anime of Satoshi Kon, who was
Mm.
formerly a manga artist, then became an animator. Rest in peace. He died in the 2000s, I think 2008, 2011. It's just the filmmaking that's happening in those mediums. There's so much. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good note for any director. If Sam Mendes is doing it, if Christopher Nolan's doing it, you should be consuming these other mediums to be able to not just lift it,
Agreed.
but remix it in the way that Quentin Tarantino is so good at, all of these directors for that matter,
Mm.
to be able to elevate the medium of film. And that's like the beauty of it, you know?
Yeah. Like you said, I think you just mentioned it there, Darren Aronofsky with Paprika. You know, literally ripped off a bunch of it. If you watch Jordan Peele, he tries to sneak Akira into most of his works. I would say this as well. One thing that's reminded me of this film, Conrad Hall was referencing. He said he was referencing Edward Hopper paintings. Uh, Edward Hopper, Americana, everything. If you ever want to see Nighthawks, I think they made a film called Nighthawks based on Edward Hopper's paintings. Conrad Hall was trying to, you know, channel Edward Hopper with these compositions that he's doing in the frames and everything like that. In the same way, and this is something that maybe even FA could do as like an article. Maybe Zach, if he's watching, Zach could do something on this. I love seeing works of art within paintings. Sorry, works of art within films. You know, paintings within film. If you watch Nolan, he does Caspar David Friedrich, Wanderer in the Sea Mist. That is literally the man looking out from like the edge of like a cliff or something, looking out over the sea mists, and that's basically the basis for Nolan's shot of our hero walking off into the distance or standing looking out into the distance or anything like that. He's used it in every single one of his films. Yeah, like I said, Hopper in this and that one in that, and like you're saying, you're seeing it in other kinds of art forms now with Berserk and different things like that, and graphic novels. You know, I would say, but I mean, like even to go back to Road to Perdition, Jude Law's best role for me, hands down. I've not seen anything of the new Siegfried and Roy film, which apparently he's playing Siegfried in, or Roy. He might be playing one of them. But yeah, yeah, definitely Jude Law is one of my favorite films of Jude Law, and he's great. I mean, AI, he's phenomenal in AI, as the Jiggle
I
one,
was going to say,
but
AI.
he's brilliant in AI. Yeah.
Have
But
you ever seen
I'd
the
say
movie Extends with him by David Cronenberg?
I
That's a
have not.
really good movie. Highly recommend
That I watch.
everybody watching that film as well. Uh it's really awesome. And that's like a super quirky David Cronenberg film, but Jude Law in that movie and what's her name?
It's
Oh
written
man, I
down.
can't think of
I'm
her.
on it.
Yeah. That movie is definitely like super out there, but highly recommend it. But
I mean, this character, though, I'd say, we just talked about a massive dolly zoom, or Zolly, as you call it, which is a new phrase. I like the name Zolly. I've never used that one before. I've always called it a dolly zoom. But there's a cool one of Jude Law's character. I don't even think I've got it on here. I might do. I don't think it'll be in a. Yeah, this one. They do a great dolly of him, Zolly. Oh, I'm going to keep using it. Zolly. They do a great Zolly of him coming underneath this Chicago bridge, and it sort of pulls him in, and we realize he's getting closer to Michael Sullivan's character. Brilliant, brilliant character. I think he starts off, his first line is "I shoot dead people." It's brilliant. I love him. And the first time we see him, he's photographing a body that's not actually fully dead yet. And it's like this train goes past and the lights flash. It's just a masterpiece by Conrad Hall. And as I said, for his final movie, he put it all out there. And yeah, like we said about Lena Sangren earlier on, we were talking about if Wuthering Heights was the only one of his movies that I've ever seen. I would say, wow, what a phenomenal cinematographer. It's the same with Conrad Hall. If I'd not seen any of his other movies and I just saw this one, I would champion this guy for the rest of my life. Like it is brilliantly shot, and as many people are talking about in the chat right now, or in the whatever you call it, in the comments, yeah, Conrad Hall's the guy. And yeah, I'm very fortunate. As I said, my father-in-law, it's the one thing that I repeatedly ask him about, just to give me little stories about what Conrad Hall would do on set, the way that he would approach set, the way that he would, give direction whilst he's on set, anything like that. Apparently I think there was one thing where he's like, he always shouts, "I got the shot." Like it's like a little giddy school kid Like whenever he gets it perfect, whenever he's lined it all up and everything, he's like, I got the shot. Like he's found gold, somewhere. And I think, God, for a 70-odd-year-old bloke or whatever he was right before he died, that sounds cool as hell. That he's still as excited to get the shot as he was way back when he did Cool Hand Luke. Yeah, massive, massive respect for Conrad Hall. And that's why this is my second choice. And there is a documentary, I believe, about the making of this film. And yeah, big, big credit to Sam Mendes as well. A lot of time for him as a director. Coming from plays, coming from, theatre to this. This was the movie right after American Beauty. He had a lot to play for. And yeah, I thought it was great. So,
which was another collaboration between Conrad Hall and him, American Beauty, which is incredible.
yeah,
It's like, I mean, looking at Conrad Hall's list of films, Tequila Sunrise, which was super popular, Marathon Man, which I love that film with Dustin Hoffman
God.
by John
Yeah.
Schlesinger. If you haven't seen that, highly recommend that. Of course, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, In Cold Blood, which is awesome, Cool Hand Luke, like you said, The Professionals. I mean, the dudes around the block, him, Gordon Willis, Vilmos Sigmund, 3 DPs that were just cutting the path in so many ways. And I really do need to revisit Road to Perdition. Sam Mendes is one of those prolific directors who's been doing it for so long now, in the same way that Nolan and all of them are just operating at their heights. And I did see Topher. He did say Greg Fraser was the one that's going to be doing the Beatles movies, which line
Keeps
is
us
now
honest,
doing
Topher.
Dune. Yeah, Topher's on it.
Keeps us honest.
Topher's on. But I love it. It's a great film. Great pick. Definitely one. I remember when that movie came out in theaters, and that's when I didn't really have the concept of cinema history and all of the moving parts. 2002, that's when I was in like second grade, So I was loving movies for just what they are from like a consumer standpoint. I was not thinking of all of the moving pieces. But I remember this movie coming out, my dad seeing it. I did not see it with him. And I remember him saying how awesome the movie was, because my dad was a big reason why I got into cinema. He would go every week. We would go every week, especially when he could take me. Not every movie I was, of course, able to get into, especially at that time. And this movie and Vanilla Sky around this time were like the two movies I remember. He hated Vanilla Sky, which everyone, I think, universally hated that movie. Great movie just to watch and like have a good laugh to, though. Like, great, dude. Tom Cruise and Penelope Cruz in that movie is absolutely beautiful. One of her, like, just great role.
That's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to say on that, because I feel like I want to jump in on this one, right? I will say with Vanilla Sky, I give Cameron Crowe, who made Jerry Maguire one of the best comedies of all time, right? I give him the credit for taking a massive swing and not potentially, but missing in a lot of people's eyes who thought that it was going to be another Jerry Maguire. Like, for going for something that was like, weird, and showed Tom Cruise in a totally different light. I mean, we're going to see Tom Cruise do The Digger this year, right? Which could be completely off the boil. Who knows what the hell that's going to be? But at the same time, it's like, I like the fact that he takes these swings. I like the fact that, Cameron Crowe took a massive swing there. If he missed, no problem. He didn't miss with me. I actually quite enjoyed the film, right? Even when he pulls that face off, right? But and runs into the lobby thinking it was a dream. But you think about the way that paved for movies like Inception and movies like Endless Sunshine. You know what I mean?
Where it's like a massive swing. Plot twist. Oh yeah, and even dude, I remember the first time I watched that movie, but actually not the first time. I revisited that movie back in like 2022. I was watching it with, at the time, and not my wife yet, but my like partner back then. And I remember I was just showing this movie because I was in Mexico and we were at my friend's home, and it was just like happened to be on video on demand, and I hadn't seen it for a while. But the car crash sequence in that movie is brutal. It is brutal. He just like hits the side of a tunnel, and I'm like, yo, how is this guy even alive? It's a very brutal like sequence, but it's a really funny film, really funny movie. So going to my next pick, which I'm super excited about, which is a film that I believe I introduced you to. And it's Michael Haneke. I think that's how you say his last name. 1997 Funny Games. And the reason why I say the date, because he actually made this movie twice. This is the first time he made it. I believe this was shot in Austria. where I believe he is from. Let's see, yeah, Austria. Uh, looks like production. Yeah, I want to say yeah, shot outside of Vienna, likely, and really awesome movie. And before I get into what it's about and kind of add just the context of why I like this film, again, another 10. I think this film teaches you so much about filmmaking. And if you don't know his work, Michael Haneke is a great director, multiple Palme d'Or winner at Cannes for things like The White Ribbon. That's a movie that we could do a whole dissertation on alone.
Easily.
More, which is a more recent film. I mean, these are all pretty recent. 2001, White Ribbon, Amour is really good. He did Happy End, which was in 2017. Like I
Never
said,
seen it.
there was the shot for shot remake that came out in 2007. I think it's really important to think of both of these when you're watching this movie, because to my understanding, he actually originally wanted to make this movie in the United States. And I don't know what ultimately allowed him to, or what deterred him from making it in the United States, where he ultimately returned to this film almost 10 years later or 10 years later to make it in the US. But
Mm.
really divisive film. And to kind of hop into what this movie is, I'll give you the short kind of synopsis here. Two violent young men take a mother, father, and son hostage in their vacation cabin and force them to play a sadistic games with one another for their own amusement. And it's a really simple film. It's not a lot of locations. Takes place at this summer home and their vacation home that is right on the lake. It's a community that you can tell that they know a lot of the other people, and this family definitely comes from some affluence. You know, they have money. It's a very nice home. They're probably not the richest person in the world, but they've worked well to get a Range Rover and drive to this summer vacation home with their son. Some really great actors. If you know Ulrich, he actually did a really awesome movie called I think it's The Life of Others, but in German it's this. The Last Witness. I believe it's The Lives of Others is what it is in English for the English release. Highly recommend watching this,
It's
but
what the conversation was based on, wasn't it? I
I think
believe.
this came out after they based this on the conversation, because I want to
There you
say,
go.
but
Yeah,
maybe the original The Life of Others is, you could be right. Let me see. The Lives of
that's a brilliant
Others.
film, though. That it's a phenomenal film, The Lives of Others. I know we said the conversation is amazing. We talked about that in the
Yeah,
previous
this
one, but
one.
The Lives of Others is brilliant,
Yeah,
and that's
highly
definitely
recommend this.
Criterion. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say this is definitely on Criterion.
Mhm.
Highly recommended, because the main actor is really awesome, and all the actors for that matter are really awesome in this movie. But going back to this movie is really brutal. It's one that I've shown a lot of people. I showed Chris early in our relationship, or maybe not even early, but one time when we were hanging out, I was like, hey, there's this movie that I think every filmmaker should see, because it's a great example of how you, as the director, can manipulate the audience and take them on a journey that is ultimately not satisfying. And there's a really awesome quote. I actually put a post about this on Instagram today. That was a quote from Haneke himself talking about this movie. And he essentially predicted that this film would be misunderstood, and
Mhm.
that if it was successful, it was because audiences didn't understand the meaning behind this. In the 90s, where we're having technology emerging, and that's where we start to have things like the Walkman, and news is super popular, and just media itself. And he was having a discussion about media and how hyper violent movies were also becoming, and how desensitized we were just to the 24-hour news cycle and to what we were able to see with like the internet itself. So we wanted to create this movie that showed some horrendous, sadistic games being played out by two gentlemen who essentially visit this vacation home, this cabin, and for lack of a better reason, you get to see them kind of play games to their ultimate demise. And this is something that is happening one house to another house. This
Yeah.
was not the first house that they did. Someone else died. I believe their neighbor was ultimately,
Mm.
they were there. When you go into the intro sequence of this, let's pull it up. Funny games. When you go to, and shout out to Shatek, collaborator
Yeah,
of ours
great.
here at Filmmakers Academy.
What a
If you
resource.
don't
What
have
a
this
resource.
resource, highly recommend it. I know a lot of people in our membership, they have Shot Deck accounts. And if you are an FA member, you do get a discount for Shot Deck. Reach out to us directly and we'll make sure to get you that. But in the beginning of this movie, I love it on multiple levels because even from the jump, he is manipulating you as an audience and what to expect. We see this really awesome intro where they're driving in this car and it looks like a happy family, and you probably remember whatever they're playing classical music wise, but they're playing CDs. Again, we're showing physical media and them listening to this song, and it's really enchanted and it's awesome music and visuals. And then all of a sudden, like, death metal just starts playing and it smash cuts to Funny Games as a title, and it's super jarring. Like, the first time you watch this movie, and I highly recommend, if you've never seen this, to not watch a trailer, do not read a lot about this film, even potentially skip over this part of the conversation.
Turn us off now if you've
There
not
is a
seen it.
potential you might just want to do that. But if you want to
And
tap
then
in,
put us
and
back on after you've
yeah.
seen it.
Yeah. Pause and then come back. But this movie, even from the beginning, is going to show the brutality of the experience just with the utilization of the music that's played in this world diegetically, to then the superimposed Funny Games title coming up and covering the screen. And it kind of is foreboding, and you really don't know what you're going to get into. But even in this earlier sequence, we see them, they're about to get to their house, they're waving to their neighbor. I even want to say that they are meant to have dinner with those neighbors that night, something along those lines. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they see them, and here's two gentlemen, and it's kind of an awkward exchange. It seems like our two main characters, they would have a really natural connection. This is not the first time they would expect to see them. They see them every summer, it seems like, in the way that they're expecting to converse. But you can see that there is this degree of separation. We never get a shot that is close to them. It's always from the perspective of our two protagonists in the car. And you see that there's these two people with them. And I believe they even comment, oh, they must have guests, someone in their family there. But you as the audience, you don't spend too much time on it. It kind of passes over, and they ultimately get to their home. And low key, I love this, like, Range Rover. What a beautiful car. I know they're not the best built cars. You Brits, you make really beautiful things that tend to fall apart, but what a beautiful looking car. And they go to this home, and the world in the set of this film all takes place essentially at this home. There's some, like, ancillary locations that kind of surround it, but it's all immediately in this home on its property at the dock. But for most part, it's within the confines of the home itself. And this film is really interesting because, one, it's super simple. You're given not a lot of information, but, like, you slowly learn who they are, why they're here, likely for the summer to have some time away. She's going to be making dinner. And in this process, someone's knocking at their door, which you first get to see this character, which all he wants is some eggs. And he says he is a relative, essentially, to the neighbors that they drove by. He's visiting, they're making dinner. Can I get some eggs? But this guy, if you've never seen this movie, has a very, like, interesting way of communicating. He's very, like, shy, but also very insistent because he gets these eggs and then ultimately breaks them and then asks for more eggs. And at this point, he's made a mess on their doorstep. He's broken eggs, but says, really, you should give me more eggs after they just got these groceries. And she's about to run through a whole sleeve of eggs as he gets the other set, being super insistent, to ultimately they break. And I think there's a really awesome shot. I believe this time he even breaks them with inside the kitchen and knocks the phone into the sink. So this guy who comes out of nowhere and is insisting to be a part of the family next door, he starts to create a mess. He's breaking eggs, and you can see the wife's character is getting super infuriated by this character who's now inside their house. I don't know why it keeps highlighting that, but who's now inside this house, has not only ruined a bunch of eggs, is being weird. He's ruined their phone. That is going to become a core element of this film, them not being able to cry out to get help because this guy has essentially cut all connection to the outside world until, and I don't know what is going on here with this blue, but
I don't know. It's giving it like kind of a very Gasparinotti.
Yeah, it's going for a really eyes wide shut kind of, like,
Gaspar
tree
nose
world look.
Clockwork Orange.
But ultimately, his friend shows up, his companion, who is this gentleman who allows himself to uh go into their home, and I'll just click on it so we can
There
bypass
you go.
this.
That's
And now
better.
these characters essentially start this game, and he has the clubs and the father comes back, and they start to play these games that lead to some very sadistic outcomes. But it's this like film where it's you're following these characters. You really don't know much about any of these people besides some loose core elements to what their background could be, as they are ultimately met step by step through these really abusive and graphic, you know, sequences that play out. But throughout this
Mm,
movie, Haneke does this really awesome thing where he's breaking the fourth wall. You can see it right here.
terrifying. Yeah.
Really bummer about this blue thing, but essentially she's looking for their dog, which they ultimately find out he is killed with one of the
Mm,
clubs outside and stuff them inside the car. But every beat, our antagonists or our villains, if you will, are one step ahead and even control of us as the audience, where we feel like, oh, what is this? What's going to happen? And there's a really core sequence that happens with the remote. Um, and we'll get to that in a second. But what I love from like a filmmaking writing standpoint and the director's standpoint is how manipulative this film is. And that is the biggest
mm,
core takeaway I can say of this movie before we get into ultimately what plays out. And I don't even want to like explain the remote sequence. I think that's one that you as the audience need to experience for the first time without
true.
knowing the context of it. But man, what a manipulative movie. And it taught me a
It
lot about,
does.
oh, you as the writer and the director, you always need to be one step ahead of the audience. And you hear that in
Mm,
film school. That's what I was taught in my writing classes, is you never want the audience to be a step ahead of you as the writer or the director, because then you've lost them. If they know what the outcome of your protagonist is going to be, or what the antagonist is going to do, or the scene
mm,
that is supposed to be the twist, you lose it for the audience, and that's where you lose that satisfaction. And this film even takes it a step further, where you're a step of the audience and you have these moments of like, oh my god, applause, yes, we're finally getting that leg up. But Haneke is a director who's so masterful, even in these moments of gratification, smacks you back and says, no, you will never be in charge of what is going to happen next. And here is
true.
why. And I just want to hear your perspective, because we saw this together. And I remember every time I watched this, and I remember the first time I watched it, I was just so floored and blown away in a completely different way, where Lahane is this high octane experience of multiple characters on screen sharing this energy. This film, again, is very impactful. Maybe not high octane is not the word. There's some
Mm.
moments that really hold for a long time. It's almost the same level of brutality, but shown in these really drawn out sequences. And yeah, it's really great.
I think that one of the things that is very interesting about you, and you showing this to me, and you showing this to Kira, and then you showing this to different people you know, is you get some kind of gratification from
I
seeing
do.
the utter psychological twists that it puts you through. Because honestly, like when I watched this with you, I was coming around for like a Friday night, right? It was coming around to have like a beer and a chat. It's like, like just hang out on it. It was just me and you having a hang. And you were like, right, we're going to watch this movie, Funny Games. Have you ever seen it? I was like, no. And then you put this on, and I'd say within what, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, your world has changed. Everything has flipped
Yeah.
from 10 minutes in, or maybe 15, as I said. Like, the moment that those eggs fall on the floor, the moment that she goes out of the kitchen and into the living room and sees this pretty much going on, uh, the situation changes. Like, and it is incredibly scary. And I'd say as well, yeah, you're right. The fourth wall breaks are incredible
Throughout the
filmmaking.
movie, there's
Throughout the
multiple.
movie, there's so many, and yeah, you're right. This remote control thing, which you said you're not going to kill, but we did tell people as a spoiler. I mean, like
Yeah,
that moment where what you think is going to happen or what you would
right
like to
here.
happen, yeah, he takes you through what you would like to happen, and then he literally rewinds it back. He says, "Oh, this is what you want, would you?" And the antagonist rewinds it back and shows you how it how he wants it to play out. And it is a filmmaker. It is Haneke saying, this is what you think should happen, and this is what I'm going to do next. I'm not going to compare it in any way, shape, or form to any other filmmaker, but I am, right? It reminds me of watching Vice, Adam McKay, not in any way the same filmmaker, completely vastly different. But Vice with Adam McKay, there's a moment where it's like, and it all ended up happily ever after, and the credits are rolling, and then it just stops, and everything rewinds back, and then and we're straight back to, no, this is what actually happened. This is what happened when the decision was changed, and it wasn't that way. And I think that for a filmmaker to do that, it became art form. Then it became something totally different. I mean, when you look at these, filmmakers who have got the guts and the balls to do that, it's incredible. And that's what changed for me with this film. And every time that I see this guy's whites of his eyes, it scares the hell out of me. And it really does.
Great
This guy
acting.
is utterly terrifying, isn't he? I mean, he scares me now,
It's great
Yeah, it's
acting, and it's
brilliant film.
this whole concept of control. I mean, you said it so well. It's this you see this character George, which is this gentleman who's the one that's definitely the more sadistic of the two. Ultimately, this character ends up to being quite a man in the making. I think this is Paul, is who it is, or maybe not Paul. Maybe it's Peter. I can't remember.
We
But
don't learn the names, do we? Or do we?
no, we do hear them saying, "Remember Georgie," is they kept
Okay.
saying like their names throughout it. Or no, I think George. I'm trying to see. Maybe it's Paul. It's hard to say based on their photos from my IMDb, but their names are not like the biggest part of it. But ultimately, yeah, this moment happens where this character loses control of the scene or the scenario that's playing out, and he decides that no, that's not what I ultimately want to have happen with this story. Rewinds it, and then a different outcome plays out. And it's those moments that I didn't even think you as a filmmaker could utilize in storytelling. It's really manipulative. And I see beats of that. If you've played like The Last of Us Part 2, that's a very manipulative game as well, especially as you're in Ellie's descent storyline. There's a lot of things that you do in that video game that forces the hand of the audience. And not quite the same, but for those that have played that game and know exactly what I'm talking about, this is a great example of them doing that in a movie. And it's just an awesome film. And for his body of work, and I do have a certain affinity to like hyper violent cinema. I really love that segment or some genre in cinema. And I feel like this one in particular just does such a good job of having a very simple story with awesome characters that are active and are met with a moral dilemma and are caught in a situation where you, the whole time as the audience, can't help but wonder what you would do if you were in their shoes as you're sitting there with everything that's playing out and them playing with the shotgun and saying that some of you are going to be dead by tomorrow. It's a great film just from that lens alone. Like thinking about the audience and putting them on that ride. It's awful. It's a torment, and it's one that's so well done. And I would highly recommend watching this one first. If you've never seen any of them, please start with the original. I prefer it over the American one, but the American one is still really good to watch, and maybe even try to watch them within a 48-hour period, because you can see ultimately what he was trying to do with this shot-by-shot remake, which also is in such a Haneke fashion. Like, this dude's body of work speaks for it itself. Like, an absolute maverick filmmaker who's every single movie, even The Piano Teacher is good. Code Unknown is good. Everything he does is top notch. And I mean, it's been some time, honestly. He's older now. He's been around the block. I mean, I hopefully he has another couple films left in him,
He's done a great book, and isn't it called Haneke on Haneke? There's a book that he's just written, I believe, and that's a good one. I've not read it, but I've read sections of it. So yeah, definitely worth a thing. And also, I'd say in the American remake, Brady Corbett, what is it, the brutalist? Doesn't he play the Georgie part?
Yeah, I think he is you can see him right here. He's the one that drops the eggs. Yep.
The younger of the two. I always, those white gloves, man, they always, even though I know that they were on some kind of golf course or whatever, those white gloves really kind of, I don't know, freak me out a little bit as well, Yeah, very, very cool film. And a great choice.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Even those long takes, the moments when right, there's moments where after a shocking thing has happened, we are just left there to ruminate on it. And whereas any other, like a less experienced filmmaker or a less avant-garde filmmaker would cut away and we'd go, meanwhile back at the ranch, but something else happened. This just leaves you in the room to experience
Absolutely.
this horror that has just occurred in the corner. And you're just there to sort of and you don't know how long it's going to go on. It's one of the most, as I said, going around to yours on a Friday night and watching that. I went home with my head in my hands. But yeah,
It's
very,
a
very
that
cool film.
that beat in particular that you're talking about is just a great example of his taste in pacing too, which you even get to experience even more so in something like The White Ribbon. He
Mm,
is a great filmmaker from that perspective. His taste in pacing and that shot where you just hold on and you have to live in that moment of what the hell just played out in front of me. And
mm.
especially from the mother's perspective, as she's sitting there just like paralyzed by the
Yeah.
image of what ultimately just happened to their son. Like, it's so good. And it reminds me of the likes of, again, Neon Genesis. If you've never watched that anime, I
Mm,
always say that Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of the best paced stories I've ever seen. It is a masterclass in storytelling. There is no other piece of cinema narrative storytelling that I think nails the art of pacing better than that show. Now, granted, it is a multi-episode show. I want to say
mm.
it's around 22 episodes, and then there's a whole other movie, maybe 25 episodes. But here, I'll actually share my screen again so I can just pull that up
Sure.
so everyone knows
Yeah.
what I'm
Before we
talking
get
about.
onto my third pick.
Yeah. This is just a quick aside for funny games where I love pacing. I think the art of pacing is one of the hardest parts of the filmmaking process. I think it's the part that sometimes gets pushed to the side, especially for writers when they're on tight deadlines or by studios trying to hit these beats that are almost like TikTok moments, if you will, in movies at this point, especially when you look to some Netflix productions or over analyzing plot. I know that we just talked about that on that Joe
Mm,
Rogan episode with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, where they talk about
mm,
the way that they look at the writing process. And Neon Genesis and Funny Games are two examples of the importance of playing with the convention of film itself,
mm,
story, how long shots should hold, the way that you can remix sequences or have things out of order. That's the biggest problem with streaming and like algorithms today is that it kills the concept of challenging the convention of storytelling and traditional structure. And I highly recommend these two pieces of art because they do such a good job of saying, yeah, if I want to hold on someone sitting in an awkward moment, or in the case of Funny Games, the moment that we ultimately see this awful, horrendous act, you're going to sit there for 2 minutes and not break that shot. So you can feel the agony of these characters and you start to get uncomfortable. And Andrei Tarkovsky talked about it best. If you've watched his movies, he has some incredibly long takes in his film, and he always had this perspective of there's this weird thing psychologically as the audience member when you present something that does not cut to take away the audience into the next scene is one you suspend them in this moment that as you go you're like, okay, yeah, I see what's going on. And then there's this awkward middle period. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, where you start to question what you're looking at. And then as it gets to that almost breaking point or tipping point and you break through that, your mind starts to almost kind of like weave into the imagery that you see and gets closer and closer. And he always talked about with his cinema, especially, he wanted to remove the layer between the audience and the film, the screen
mm.
itself, and to have them transcend into the visuals. And Tarkovsky's doing a lot. His approach is a lot different than Funny Games and even Neon Genesis, where he's trying to have this almost depth and poetic, like philosophical perspective in his sequencing. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, I think that you could even still apply some of that to the tragedy of this movie, you know? So that's my final thoughts with this film, but it's a really awesome piece and I really like recommend it.
I would too. Yeah, totally. One of the coolest. And as I said, now going from that incredibly poetic take of Brendan to something completely different, but yet still quite sublime in itself. I've gone for my third movie, Man in the Moon. Right? And now this one is it was seen as a massive flop. Okay, at the time, Jim Carrey. This is sort of in the late 90s. He has been, or mid to late 90s. Jim Carrey has been in sort of Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls. He's been in Dumb and Dumber. He's been in Liar Liar. He's been huge. Like, he is a huge star. And then he turns up in Milos Forman. And we've talked about Milos Forman before, Amadeus, but Milos Forman's Man on the Moon. And the reason I love this movie is because it is a biopic that, if we're talking about subversion of films, this by Larry Karaszewski is one of the writers who I absolutely love as a writer. This subverts the genre of biopics. You know, like we've talked about it. I worked on the Michael movie, and I'm not giving anything away about plot because my NDA will kill me. But you know, we'll see how that biopic plays out. We've seen how Bohemian Rhapsody and the Queen biopic has played out. We're going to see how the Madden biopic plays out. The thing that I love about Man on the Moon is that at the very beginning, we start with his death. We start at his funeral, and Andy Kaufman, played by Jim Carrey, comes out and says, "I don't want you to watch this biopic. You know, go home." Like, is effectively saying, "I don't want you to watch this movie." And I think that sets us up for what is going to be this subversion of what the biopic genre is, because everybody wants to know, you know, oh, like, what was it like? What was it like? You know, was this person like a lovable character? I suppose in a way, Andy Kaufman was a lovable character in certain respects, but uh, he's utterly detestable at times as well. You know what I mean? He's not a nice guy. It's a little bit like when I was talking to you about Marty Supreme at the beginning of this. Marty Supreme isn't a good guy. You know what I mean? He does some horrible stuff, or he does some really bad stuff. Yet we still kind of root for him a little bit. I think that's the same in Man on the Moon. I think that there's elements in this, as I said, like where Andy, yeah, like we truly do root for the guy that we've just seen doing anything to make his own downfall, you know, realistic. I mean, it's also about performers, you know, and where does the performer end and where does the person begin? We talk about Andy Kaufman's life and career, and also the impact of fame on him and the pressures of living up to these public expectations of him. And one of the things about Andy Kaufman which interests me is I worked on a TV show called The Goldbergs, which my wife was co-producer of, that had like a run of about 10 years. And a guy that I used to have the pleasure of driving to set on certain days in a golf cart was Judd Hirsch, who was the Alex Rieger in Taxi. And he was on this show called Taxi. And he actually got nominated for an Oscar one day when I was driving him in the golf cart in the morning from hair and makeup to set. For The Fabelmans. He played Uncle Boris in Steven Spielberg's Fabelmans. Brilliant film. But not our favourite. And yeah, he told me a story because I asked him one day. I was like, "You worked on Taxi, not Taxi Driver, Taxi with Andy Kaufman. What was he like?" And he said, "You didn't know who he was from one day to the next. You didn't know what he was going to turn up like." That was the thing that he told me, and it always resonated with me. And I thought, I think that's what made him so intoxicating for Milos Forman to tell his story. You know. So before we even get into the film itself, just talking about Andy Kaufman as a character and as a person, you know, this was a guy who was ready to kind of subvert the whole genre of comedy. He didn't like sitcoms. He didn't want to be in Taxi, you know. And you see this throughout the film. He was weird. He had an alter ego who was called Tony Clifton, who was a Vegas lounge singer, and he pretended to be him on the phone and like in real life. There was points where Andy Kaufman turned up, like people were trying to find him for days, and it turned out he was working in a burger bar, you know, even though he was one of the most famous comedians on earth. And he did these weird things just to be a complete artist and a complete performer and do things that were different to everybody else. He did wrestling where he wrestled women because he knew that he could beat women, right? Which sounds horrendous nowadays, but literally that was his sort of like his thing. So he was a very strange guy. And that's what makes this biopic, I think, so interesting, because it's not the same thing. And the other thing you'll find is it's not the same kind of biopic as what you've seen before. The other thing I'd say is this, right? Jim Carrey, there is a great documentary that's been made about this that's on Netflix. Some people
I
will
was just
comment on
gonna
it.
say,
Yeah. Some people are going to say it, right? It's called Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. And it is nuts. Like, Jim Carrey literally gave up himself and became Andy Kaufman. And if you watch it, it's absolutely bonkers. Like, he doesn't care about upsetting the crew. There's one point where the news crews got involved because he said he was suing the production because he'd broken his neck, which he hadn't done. It was just him channeling Andy. Andy Kaufman's family were coming to set and were hugging him and thought that they were experiencing Andy come back from the dead. It was an utterly crazy experience making this film. And if you watch it, Danny DeVito's got his head in his hands and he's like the producer. It's an absolutely crazy story. And as I said, Jim Carrey really does embody the character of Andy Kaufman on and off set. And yeah, that's what I love most about this film. I think that it's brilliant. Paul Giamatti does a great performance as Bob Smuda. Danny DeVito, who played opposite the real Andy Kaufman in Taxi, is now playing George Shapiro, his agent. And yeah, Courtney Love's in there, fresh off her relationship with Kurt Cobain, playing Andy Kaufman's girlfriend. It's nuts, and there's recreated scenes in this from like this one. We've got actually what's his name, Norm Macdonald's here, and you've also got Sybil Shepherd, and they're playing opposite him in Fridays. You got this one where he's on the actual David Letterman show, a remake from 1984 when Andy Kaufman was on there with Jerry Lawler, who's also Jerry Lawler, the wrestling guy. It's just a great film, and I really like it. I really like how it subverts this genre of biopic, and I'll always go to bat for it. It's a movie I've seen countless times. I love Milos Forman. I've always loved him. I love Milos Forman as a director. He's a character director, as I said, but yeah, there's something about this movie that really does. I don't know. I've always loved it, and I think I always will. Yeah, Sweeney, what you got to say about it?
You know what I have to say, because I know that we've talked about best years and best decades. 1999 was a banger year for cinema. Again, just like this movie came out, Eyes Wide Shut came out. In this, I just want to speak to this year, and then I'll give you my thoughts like on this movie overall. That 99 best movies. Let's just like ring that off, because the competition was super fierce in 1999, and this Fight Club came out in 99. The Matrix came out in 99. American Beauty came out in 99. Toy Story 2, another Disney classic, came out in 99. The Sixth Sense came out the same year as this movie. Just goes to speak how strong Being John Malkovich came out in 1999, which that seems ridiculous. For some reason, I felt like that was like The Talented Mr. Ripley, which shout out to the Ripley TV show, which I have not finished, but was absolutely beautiful. Black and white. Man on the Moon, which is crazy to consider how stacked, and it is a great movie. I feel like it was misunderstood, and that's what was so good about the 2017 Jim and Andy documentary. And I think what the film speaks on itself so well that the documentary almost spoke to better, because thematically speaking, that Andy Kaufman is such a complex character and was so polarizing and misunderstood that I actually saw a comment in IMDb that someone said it's a story about a man who lived and died essentially misunderstood. And I think the film followed suit, because how do you tell a story about a man that no one understood, that then Jim Carrey went to the lengths of replicating in a film through method acting, to then have a film that was received and misunderstood again? It kind of spoke to the enigma of Andy Kaufman as this eccentric kind of jester, comedian who did weird stuff throughout his career. Like you said, was a wrestler and tried to have that sitcom. And I think for like a big part of it, he really wanted to have the Andy Kaufman show. And then he ultimately did. And it was like a very bizarre show, right, in itself. Or he was an actor. I think he was the taxi driver. What was it? The sitcom that he ultimately got.
He was the mechanic in Taxi called Latka. Right, and he had to put in, and it was basically a character of his called Foreign Man, and he also did like Elvis impressions, and apparently he was amazing at doing Elvis impressions. And mate, it's like what gets me is even at the end of this film, and I'm giving away the ending, so if you've not seen it, go watch it. But the ending of this film, when you think you know when everything gets tied up in a bow, usually in films, right? With this one, we see Tony Clifton, Andy Kaufman's alter ego, After he has died, you see Tony Clifton on stage singing I Will Survive. And as the camera pans the crowd, the only other person who's ever played Tony Clifton, which is Bob Zmuda, played by Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti is standing in the crowd, so it can't be him. So you're left with the question, who's playing Tony Clifton? And is Andy Kaufman really dead? And this was one of the things that even newspapers at the time, when it got announced that he died, newspapers didn't know if he was really dead or whether this was an Andy Kaufman prank because he played so many pranks on people. So they didn't know for months after his death. And it's still debated today whether Andy Kaufman is still alive. It's like an Elvis. Is he still with us or not? So yeah, I think that's what makes me like it. And as I said, once I'd watched this film, like ages ago, I watched this, like you said, 99, so I must have been 13. When I first watched it, as I said, it stuck with me. And then when I was talking to, Alex Rieger himself, Judd Hirsch, I had to ask him. And yeah, he said, I get asked about Andy Kaufman more than I get asked about my roles or anything I've ever done. It's sad, but like, he is such an anomaly. He's somebody who, like, there's stories as well, Sweeney. I'll tell you this random one. So apparently people would show up to his live shows expecting him to do comedy, and he would just open up Great Expectations to start reading, and like wild things like that. He was an absolutely bonkers fella, and yeah. So that was my third choice because I thought, hey, if you're going to be a filmmaker and you want to make something and make a biopic, which everybody's making right now, we're going to have the Beatles coming up soon, which Topher's told us all about. Greg Fraser's shooting. I'm sure it'll look beautiful. We've just got the Michael one, which Dion Beebe shot and Antoine Fuqua masterfully directed, and I'm sure it's going to be really well received and everything like this. But they're all biopics and they all follow a not cookie cutter, but certainly a formulae. And this one doesn't really follow that formula. It likes to go a little bit off the rails, and that's pretty cool.
Oh.
So, yeah, give this one a watch. Sweeney, where you going?
Are
you there?
I might have lost Chris.
Sweeney?
I don't know if everybody can still hear me here. I think we might have lost Chris, so...
Oh, no, it's
all right. Well...
Oh, is it?
If you don't answer now, Sweeney, I'm going to move on to my secret one, which is going to be The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson. So I know you've got a third one to talk about, but I am going to talk about The Master if you're not going to be there. Guys, since you've seen Man on the Moon, I'm going to throw in my secret one because then Sweeney can come back and he can talk about his. But my other one, which I absolutely love as a film, is The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson. And if you've not seen it, go give it a watch because this is the guy, Lancaster Dodd. 3 words, Philip Seymour Hoffman, one of the greatest of all time. All right. Absolutely love him, miss him every single day. I'd say probably my favorite actor. I even love Mission Impossible 3, where he plays the bad guy. All right. He's amazing. And in this, I think he's one of his best performances of all time. Sweden just texted me, by the way. Brendan just texted me and said that his internet has just crashed. So he'll be back with us in a moment. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk about this, one of my favorite P.T. Anderson movies, which not many people talk about because they all talk about There Will Be Blood, which is the best. They all talk about Licorice Pizza, which is great. They all talk about Magnolia, which is also unbelievable and many of you are big fans of. And they also talk about Phantom Thread. Sweeney, how are we? You're back.
Sorry, I literally disappeared. Oscar.
You did. And I chose that opportunity to jump into The Master, which was my other choice, because I thought, hey, since you're not here to throw your one in, I was like just talking to him about The Master, but I can jump off this now and let you have your third pick. But yeah, guys, if you've not seen it, watch The Master. I've got loads more things to say about it, but I'll just say, watch it for Philip Seymour Hoffman because he's the greatest of all time, and I miss him, and I wish I could just watch him in every... Punch Drunk Love, amazing. I wish I could watch him in every film. I miss him. He's the greatest.
Well, I just want to say something before we wrap up with Man on the Moon. Apologies about that. I think my internet just crapped the bed. Dude, the making of that movie, again, if you have not seen the documentary, first watch the movie. I think the movie is getting its flowers finally after many years. The documentary really helped make it, be perceived in a better light. It's also like Foreman's last great, like, major motion picture as well. which I think is something to say. Foreman
Hmm.
ultimately passed away in 2018, I want to say. And, he didn't really go on to make too much else. I think he made a musical that was smaller and then another film, but this was really his last like production with a lot of money put into it. And even I think it was super hard for him having to deal with Jim Carrey, who is impersonating Andy Kaufman and living into this method acted role. He even talked about having insomnia and while he was in production for this movie, sleeping throughout the
Yeah.
film. Like he need anytime he could get a nap, he was struggling to sleep because the movie was so stressful to make. And they were literally threatening to fire Foreman. And I think Jim Carrey threatened to quit if Milos got fired. So it was a tumultuous film. And I think partially this is what caused him to kind of hang up directing after this.
Yeah. I mean, he was Jim Carrey really did. I mean, but mate, this is the thing with Jim Carrey. Like, there's stories about him on the Batman Forever set, like annoying Tommy Lee Jones, and Tommy Lee Jones saying something like, "I will not sanction your buffoonery," and losing it at him. That's straight from Jim Carrey's mouth, by the way. He told it on the Norm Macdonald show. But like, Carrey used to go all in. And this story here is not him going all in on a comedy character. This is him going all in on a like really difficult to understand individual. You know what I mean? And as I said, like that Jim and Andy, it's an incredibly philosophical movie as well because the documentary, he talks about his dad. And he says something like his dad wanted to always be like a lounge singer or something. His dad always wanted to be like a singer, but he gave it up and became like a real menial job and because he never believed in himself. And Jim Carrey talks about if you're gonna fail, I'd rather you failed at trying to do something you love than failed at doing something that you don't want to do. You know what I mean? Was the basic. I mean, I'm paraphrasing like really badly there, but like he told this story, and when you see what he does with this character, I can't imagine anybody else playing it. And I know that there were a lot of people up for this role. I think Dustin Hoffman was up for this role, if I remember correctly. You know, yeah, there's something that Jim Carrey does, and I gotta give him his chops. He's great in Eternal Sunshine. He's great in these more gritty, kind of shocking roles, dramatic roles than he is, with the comedic roles as well. A little bit like Robin Williams. Great in comedy roles, phenomenal in drama roles. Just has the timing, does everything like that, and yeah, as I said, watch Jim and Andy, watch The Great Beyond, the way that he is, because it took him a long time to leave this character as well. I think that when REM asked him to do the music video for Man on the Moon, which is a phenomenal song, right? He said he couldn't do it. He said he didn't want to go back to the character of Andy. I mean, like there's beautiful things on set as well. People crying on set on Tony Clifton's last day, on the day that Andy dies. Like literally people who've grown up kind of watching this guy, like watching Jim play this character, and they literally took it to the end. I mean, again, Milos Forman's directing a character biopic. Milos Forman did Amadeus. Milos Forman did Larry Flint. Like it's Milos Forman on a character biopic. It's not going to be bad. And as I said, I think that this is an exceptional piece of work, and that's why it's one of my favorites. And I did mention The Master while you were off, but another one that I'm going to talk about right after you've finished your third pick for
Absolutely. And
tonight's
Brendan
favorite film.
Brendan Reels said that he would love to see Jim Carrey in more serious roles. And I know that your favorite Jim Carrey movie is actually the number 23, right? Don't you love that movie?
He's not bad in it, but it's just it's a bit like when Nick Cage was in Numbers, and it's pretty much the exact same kind of premise. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say, yeah, this is my favorite Jim Carrey role. I'm gonna throw that one out
I
there.
would
I think it
say.
is.
And Topher made a good point. We got to get Jim Carrey out of the Sonic the Hedgehog sequels, but I actually heard those movies are particularly good because of Jim Carrey. And I think even Jim Carrey has been on record saying like the only movies he wants to be in are Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know if anyone could fact check that, but I love this concept of Jim Carrey just kind of being this fringe individual that like is spewing philosophy and just speaking to, and it's just like ultimate method actor. And hopefully he does do more serious roles. I know that when we were kids, or at least when I was a kid, he was like the number one actor. Remember? It's like
Yeah.
crazy. Bruce Almighty, period. It's insane. Like highest paid actor. Yeah. What a bro. I mean, Real even said The Truman Show, which is another great Jim Carrey
Oh,
movie.
great. Peter Weir. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
So
And
for
yeah, I mean, dude, I nearly picked that one too. I thought that was such a great movie. I mean, Truman Show already got its flowers, so if you've not seen
yeah.
Truman Show, you should have. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, like another movie that just completely, blows you away in
Subverts
terms of its
audiences'
detail. Yeah,
expectations. Yeah. That was the big thing in the late 90s, in 1999 especially. It was like breaking the fabric of our perspective about society and culture, whether it was The Matrix, whether it was The Truman Show, whether it was
Eyes Wide
in
Shut.
their Eyes Wide Shut, literally in 1990. And I also think that was particularly because of what was it, like Y2K. I think there was a
Yeah,
lot
Millennium
of
Bug.
yeah, there was a lot of angst around Y2K and that whole concept of the fabric of everything we know essentially going to be messed up because the clock in computers. I don't know if you probably remember that better than I do. When it was if
Oh
like
yeah,
at midnight, none of the clocks were going to update and it was going to cause like economic and technological failure global. And I thought it was going to be like another end of world scenario. So I think 1999 really played on the heels of the fabric of society as we know it could be taken away from us at any moment. So, yeah,
yeah.
super
We were all
interesting.
prepped for the end of the world, and then midnight came and nothing happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all just kind of sat there waiting for it,
I was too young to remember that, but I remember studying that after being very fascinated by the whole .com bubble, Y2K, technology limitations causing catastrophic failure around the world. What an amazing plot to a movie. And I'm surprised that I think they even tried to
Roland
make
Emmerich.
that into a movie. Isn't Y2K a film that actually speaks about that?
I think
I'm
it
pretty
is,
sure.
and
Yeah,
it's not
2020.
too old.
Yeah, two high school nobodies make a decision to crash a Y2K party. The night becomes even crazier. I think this deals with the whole Y2K experience. I mean, the movie doesn't have good ratings. Maybe someone else seen it, but um so for my pick, my third and final outside of my little special pick here, this is one that I feel like not a lot of people know of. And I always talk about this film a lot because it's taught me a lot about world building and character development and how much your world has an impact on the characters that inhabit your story. And if you've not heard of it, 1997, Ang Lee, the director who went on to do Best Picture winner being Life of Pi, pretty famous filmmaker, NYU, came up with the likes of Martin Scorsese and a lot of other filmmakers, not quite as old, but around that like time. He did things like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which was another really talked about film. So this guy, this is before these movies that essentially made him a household name, but he was still doing big stuff back then. And there's two films in particular that I love, one of which is The Ice Storm, which again, physical media drop. You can get this sucker on Criterion Collection. One of my favorite looking Criterion. I highly recommend this. Also, there's another film that he did here, Ride with the Devil, which is another really awesome Tobey Maguire film. He was working with Tobey Maguire a lot. I mean, this is when he was super hot. But this is like a Civil War piece, which there's not a lot of Civil War cinema. And for what is out there, this is an awesome look at a Confederate bushwhacker and just that period in history. Another kind of forgotten piece of cinema. But again, Ang Lee in the 90s and early 2000s, larger than life filmmaker, just doing some really awesome stuff. And, more recently, he's kind of, I wouldn't say fallen off the wagon. I think he's doing interesting things, even if the movie themselves, like Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk or Gemini Man, kind of pushing digital medium as far as it can go at shooting 120 frames per second. I'm not sure if anyone actually had the chance to see any of those in exhibition, but I think they're super fascinating films for what he's trying to do. I'm not even going to say that they're good movies. I'm just going to say that they're interesting movies, purely from an audience standpoint.
He did
So
that god awful Incredible Hulk film as well, right? Sorry, not awful. Misunderstood.
some people like it, some people don't. It's definitely more a pulled from the page kind of graphic novel, comic booky take with Eric Bana again. I think he definitely has some misses in my book, but for when he hits, being more specifically the Ice Storm, this is a 10 out of 10 for me. Awesome cast, and I'll give you the one line here. In 1973 suburbia, several middle-class families experimenting with substance abuse and swinging lifestyle find their lives spinning beyond their control. And what's cool about this movie is it takes place right at the time of the Watergate scandal, and essentially Nixon leaving the administration, and the country is kind of left without a leader. And we see what suburbia was super huge at this time in the 70s, because Manhattan was kind of, New York City itself was a dirty and very violent city. That's when, like, around the time where Giuliani came in and started to really clean it up and ushered in the great times of Wall Street in the 80s. It's also a time when Los Angeles was super seedy and inner cities were kind of like deteriorating, if you will. And a lot of these more affluent families and just family culture itself in the United States was moving to the suburbs of these larger cities. And this film does such an awesome job of seeing what the family dynamic and social dynamic was in the 70s, and in this case 1973. And also think, like, this is right off the heels of the Vietnam War winding down, so it all is this play on what was it like to have a family, to have a relationship, and to operate in suburban America at this time where there's so much political upheaval. And you see these characters who, you kind of get it right here. There's this really awesome swinger party that ultimately happens like end of second act going into the third act, that culminates to this really big moment with Elijah Wood's character. And I'll go through who's on this, but this film, like, it taught me so much that the world itself is a character. Not
Yep.
every movie needs that element, but for the movies that do, or that you want to broaden upon what is the antagonist or the motivating factor of the characters in this film, this one does it so well, and arguably better than a lot of other movies that I can think of, that speaks to the geopolitical tension that's happening around the world and how it funnels down and kind of fractures these families to ultimately this realization. And you see it through the books that they consume. There's constantly Nicole Richie's characters watching the news, and is this like kid that knows more about the world than their parents, as their parents are kind of grasping at straws and
Mm.
ultimately end up at this swingers party. And to speak to some of the like awesome talent, we have Joan Allen, great. Sigourney
Mm.
Weaver. If you do not know Sigourney Weaver in this movie, this is when she looks her best. Like, Sigourney Weaver looks beautiful in this movie. Like, really awesome character. Toby Maguire at his heights. Elijah Wood pre Frodo, pre The
We
Lord of the
had two
Rings.
guys who look the spit of each other, who I always get confused by in the same movie.
Yeah, it's so
I
funny.
have to second look every time they're both on the screen. I'm like, hang on a minute, which one's which here? Is it
Yeah,
Frodo? Is it Spider-Man? Which one are we on now?
yeah. Kevin Kline is in this, and if you don't know Kevin Kline, he is actually the actor that was most recently, I think, yeah, Disclaimer by Alfonso Cuarón. If you have not seen this show, talk about another gratuitous, sexually driven piece of cinema that at first I didn't love, but then ultimately loved. But his acting in this movie, if you want to see a contemporary offering of Kevin Kline, it's this. Like, and it's Cuarón. We're talking about Lubezki, two of, if
Mm.
not the best filmmakers, like top of the crust, operating on a completely different level, making a six
Yeah.
hour like movie for Apple TV. Highly recommend it. But going back to the Ice Storm, this movie just, I don't know. I feel like no one talks about this movie, and I always try to get it in people's watch lists. It might not be your
Is it?
favorite film. It might not be the film that, you're going to like reference every time you're crafting a project. But for me, I constantly, every script I write, every movie I try to develop, I think of the Ice Storm because of the importance of building the world around you. And this is one of the best examples of mid-century modern in terms of architecture. There's a lot of mid-century furniture, 1970. Like, if you just look at that, let me pull up the shot deck here again. Shout out shot deck. We love you guys
Shout out,
making
shout
this
deck.
stuff accessible. If you don't know this gentleman, this is actually Oppenheimer's friend in Oppenheimer, who is the great
David Krumholtz,
David.
right?
Yeah, amazing
Yeah,
actor. I
David
actually didn't
Krumholtz.
realize he was in this movie until I rewatched it a couple months ago with Kira, and I was like, "Holy shit!" One of my favorite characters in Oppenheimer is his friend, that essentially is
Mm.
like the caution. you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Offers
but
him a
also,
segment of orange all the time, doesn't he?
oh yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
what he does in Oppenheimer. Keeps offering him the
Oh
segments of
yeah, yeah,
orange.
yeah. Yeah, you're 100% right. He's a great character. Like his character makes me emotional every time he's on screen, but
Mm.
um yeah, the ice storm again, the whole concept. There's a couple of thematic structuring that they do really well with this, and this goes back to pacing, something that's super important for me as a filmmaker, and that is super hard to master. And I think one of the components that is the hardest in the filmmaking process. And I think it comes down to structure. That's something that I always recommend people when they're developing a script. It's how do you want to fulfill this project structurally? Is it in the traditional 3-act structure? Is it Nolan within a prologue and an epilogue? Do you want to do in multi-chapter parts like Robert Eggers does? There's a lot of ways to look at structure, which then feeds into pacing. And for this film, there's two things that push it along that I really love, that I think you can take away with. And you've seen it used in the likes of like Alien Romulus, where there's kind of this impending doom. And the ice storm, it speaks right into the name of the movie. There is this ice storm that is brewing on the East Coast that essentially is forcing everybody indoors. But then, in the more geopolitical context of this ice storm, which the ice storm is very metaphorical to what all of these people feel like they're freezing over, right? Then we have the political implications of what these characters are navigating in this society that has lost its leader, in this society that's still reeling with the fact of what ultimately happened with Vietnam, this society where it feels like inner city is decaying and there's not much of that culture that's left. And what culture has been boiled down to is an abuse of drugs, is an abuse of infidelity in the relationships that they have around them in these suburban areas. And I think Ang Lee does such an amazing job, again, of having this really interesting character piece that also speaks to the age difference, the way that youth perceives media to the way that adults perceive media, and where they kind of try to find their calm, right? And the big set piece pushes towards this swingers party, which is really funny, where all of the like parents essentially of these families and of these kids that we get to know go to this swingers party. And it's a key party. If you don't know what that is, you essentially put your car keys in the bowl, and then you go around and you pick one out, and whoever's car keys that is, in like its simplest form, you essentially go and have a night together. This is your hall pass, right? Type swingers party. And it's an interesting concept. And I think that these parties, which is funny enough, like Eyes Wide Shut builds off of that swingers party in that first act of the movie. We talked about that in episode 2 or session 2. If you've not seen it, tap back in and watch that. But swingers
Mm.
party, a very common thing amongst affluent households. And you can see these people definitely have money. They are consumers, they are people that enjoy art. And I think it's funny because they're also of this neoliberalist kind of perspective of that time, where I'm a consumer of books, I'm a consumer of art, but I am not one that creates it, which is very much the American concept, right? Like you can see it with Joan Allen's character, who is going and buying these used books at like a yard sale and runs into a pastor or some type of like religious figure who has this very like sexual aura around him. I think there's a really awesome shot of that in the beginning of this movie. Yeah, you can at least see some of the books that they're looking at. And I bet you some of these even speak to the core themes, like the power of your subconscious mind or
Mm-hmm.
fascinating womanhood. I mean, there's really a reason why all of these are Resistance, Rebellion, and Death by Albert Camus. Like all of these play into essentially the core themes of this movie. And yeah, this is the character. It's a really awesome scene. And that's like another awesome part of this movie is the ensemble nature of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Ang Lee does such a great job, similar to what we saw in the film Haigh, where all of these characters are so well defined and so thought out, and you can understand their thought process and what they struggle with sexually or within themselves, like insecurity. And this character is awesome because he's this like very like sexual innuendo religious character that she runs into and then ultimately runs into again, I believe, at the key party. And it doesn't end up being what she ultimately thinks it's going to be, but it's like really awesome relationship dynamics ultimately play out in this film. And what I love, and I got to find the picture of Sigourney Weaver because I got to speak to her beauty, especially in 1997. I mean, this is like quinticle.
Yeah.
And I also love like Sigourney Weaver is this action hero, then grounded kind of character. And you know who I feel like later in her life could play this role really well is Kira. I always thought, I'm like, Kira, this is going to be you. And I don't know how old she is, in her 40s here. How old do you think Sigourney
I think
Weaver
she's
is?
like early 40s, isn't she? I mean, I fell in love with her for Alien. Like,
Oh my God.
there's a bit at the end in Alien where she's in her underwear, and I'm like, cracky Bob. You know what I mean? Like this action star, like you said, Ripley, but yeah, she's a gorgeous human being.
Yeah, she's
I
beautiful.
love.
And it's,
By the way, can I just say, I love the swingers party when they're all pulling the women are all pulling the keys out, aren't they? Isn't there like one guy who gets his own wife, and you
oh
can just
yeah.
tell he's just absolutely gutted. He's like, you can see, he's like, oh look, you picked you picked, I've picked my wife. Okay, and then he just sort of slinks off with her like he's really good. It's just this brilliant humor that's in the midst of a really tense scene.
Yeah, you guys, if you have not seen this sequence here is so good. And
It's
they
great.
essentially, like Chris
Yeah.
was saying, goes one by one, picking keys out of the bowl. And like, I think they set it up because they couldn't commit to the concept of the swinger party. It was something along those lines. But yeah, he's ultimately gutted, and she's like, let's not have that. And there's a lot of humor in this film. And you know what's awesome is she's in this movie. What is her name? Let's go here. Oh man, awesome actress. Katie Holmes is also in this movie, which is
Okay,
insane.
young Katie Holmes. Because
Young
that's
Katie
who Tobey
Holmes.
Maguire is in love with, isn't he? He's not
Allison
quoting
Janney.
Shakespeare. Oh,
Allison
Alison
Janney,
Janney is in it.
who is an
Yeah.
awesome actress and who's done things like I, Tanya, The Help, Juno, Hairspray. It's a great, great cast. And one of the few films that I feel like from the 90s deserves to have more of an applause and appreciation because its authenticity of this era, the look into the 70s, and the craftsmanship. It's a very subtle film. It's not going to be the craziest cinematography, but even the cinematography itself and the production design they go for it. And this is one of my favorite frames. I actually use this in some of the marketing materials, but this frame alone
Oh,
speaks so much to the mask. And again, kind of deals with the eyes wide shut concept of this mask that we put on and the mask that was worn by Richard Nixon, right? This character that was also in an enigma, that was paralyzed by paranoia. And there's a really awesome Adam Curtis documentary. Let me actually go to YouTube real quick. If you've not seen this, I highly
The
recommend. I think
Trap?
you can.
Is that the one you're
It
talking about?
is. Richard Nixon syndrome. Adam Curtis. He's the director that did Hypernormalization, and he
Yeah, it's
did
great.
a piece. I think it's oh
Go down
fuck.
the rabbit hole on these Adam Curtis docs because believe me, they are eye-opening,
Yeah, you can see here.
to
Here's the
say the
full
least.
Hypernormalization full documentary.
It's
If you
all
don't
there.
know
Yeah.
about this documentary, it is one of the best pieces of contemporary journalism, documentary, just storytelling about how we are today with the banks and the way that the West shifted and how we live in this hypernormalized world, which honestly speaks so well to the core concepts of the ice storm. Because
Yeah.
essentially, what they are showing, and to better explain what hypernormalize is, and I'll pull up the exact definition that I believe Adam Curtis, he didn't coin it, but he essentially brought it to
Yeah, to the
Western.
mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's check good meaning here. So to explain what
It's
the
Soviet,
characters,
wasn't it?
yeah, there's probably an example of where it ultimately comes with, but in relationship to the ice storm and what these characters are going through, which is a hyper normalized state, is a term describing a state where society accepts a false, surreal reality as normal. So in this world, the loss in Vietnam, the way the politics and the media played out, the scrutiny of the administration sending these soldiers to essentially die and become drug abuse. And it was really the first deep examination into PTSD and the loss of these men and women who ultimately, back then, more men than women, but these soldiers ultimately went overseas to come back shells them themselves. A scandal being the Watergate scandal, right? That was huge in media itself. And this speaks to that, coined by, yeah, here you go. this gentleman regarding the late Soviet era refers to a collective paralysis where people pretend to believe in a failing system. And that is exactly what the ice storm is explaining. It's these characters that have a system in real time that's failing around them. And to be honest, it's probably how some of us feel when we watch the news, when we go on Instagram, us as Americans or those living in Western civilization, we are inundated by media that's constantly doom and gloom. That feels, I mean, we look at our administration without getting too political. It's easy to
No, it's
feel
true.
that we don't know where we're going. It feels like we're teetering into the depths of hell in some capacity between AI, the upheaval of the middle class, the escalation of the cost of living. There's so many big problems happening at once. I know I feel it is someone who has lived a really awesome life in LA. Each day feels harder and harder to live in this city. No matter how much money you have, it's not an easy existence to have, but we all live in this hyper normalized state of disregarding the failing and deteriorating system in favor for some pretend and manufactured world that we all decided to live in. And that's what I honestly like me talking about this now. I'm having so many aha moments because I didn't even realize how much Ang Lee was speaking to that concept in the 70s, which feels even more tangible now in 2026 as someone who's living through a world where I think anybody on this chat who was born in the late 90s or who is way older than I am can remember of this concept of the American dream, being able to get a steady job, maybe a lifelong career and buying a house and having a kid. Me as a millennial, and I know any those that are Gen Z and younger, we live in this almost Nietzschean, late capitalistic, over corporatized world where this Bill of Rights that we're all given, especially in the 90s, when you watch things like Full House or you watch Friends, this concept of enjoying life and enjoying our 20s, it's really hard to as a young adult, where it feels like that guaranteed success is no longer guaranteed. And let's be honest, it never was. It was not always for every demographic of human. And the American experience was always inherently flawed and looked through a lens of capitalistic happiness. And I think that's what's so awesome about this movie. And out of the three that I've spoken to like today, the one that probably has the most implication to the world that we're living in right now is this film. And I just hope everyone watches it because it is a really awesome dissection of when you fall into these moments of lack of leadership or of not a logical next step, kind of hedonism and these concepts that are not always pertinent in society start to like, show itself through the cracks and seep into the family dynamic and the American dream. And it's just a fascinating like case study film in psychological analysis that I think runs parallel to a lot of the things we feel today.
Very well put, Brendan.
Yeah,
Couldn't
that
disagree with you.
honestly was like funneling
You got
through
on
me
your
right there.
soapbox, but it
Yeah.
was certainly worth listening to. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And some
And I
people
can't
is,
really add anything to that, to be honest. I think that the way you've broken that down is exceptional because, like, when you first told me about the ice storm, you didn't really give me any of that back shot. You
no,
just kind of told me, just give it a watch. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The way you've spoken to it tonight, if that doesn't convince people to go and watch it, I don't know what will. You know,
it's a great,
Christina Ricci, pre-Buffalo '66,
yeah, it's crazy.
14-year-old, incredible.
Yeah. Crazy
Right after
cast.
Adam's Family Values.
I highly recommend it. That is my third pick. And The Ice Storm, it's a good one. Great, great storytelling. Honestly, I even think I learned in my monologuing right there. Watch this with hypernormalization. Watch the Richard Nixon, Adam Curtis short documentary that should be on here somewhere. Richard Nixon. Everyone should watch this. I can't remember what it's called, but awesome, awesome documentary. I'm going to put all these links and stuff inside the description so you guys can go back to watch this. But
Yeah, definitely
that
do.
is my third pick, Chris, and it's an awesome one.
Yeah. And I think that you're pushing on to things that are more philosophical right now, which is absolutely true. Like one of the things when I watch Hypernormalization is about this and related to today and America today and the world today is this absence of shared truth. What's true and what's not. I don't think that we know anymore because we're all being fed different things in different algorithms. You know, when we speak to people on the East Coast, they have vastly different algorithms to what we have on the West Coast, you know, and LA has a vastly different, you know, we're seeing vastly different things to what people in Florida are seeing. And that's made it very difficult to have a shared perspective on things. And that's precisely what hypernormalization has done in Soviet Russia. And it's exactly what is happening right now in America. You know, I've got friends who are over in the UK that don't experience any of this. Obviously, they're not getting American politics pumped into their system, but they're also not getting politics of fear and hate and things like that, things that we're getting hit with every single day. One of the things that then speaks to, and if we can do like a quick fire round, I kind of got to when you were frozen out by the internet system, by the powers that be, that's still mad at you for doing Eyes Wide Shut and explaining that, was The Master, Paul Thomas Anderson. You know, a movie that's vaguely veiled about a kind of cultish kind of religion that's called the Cause. I don't want to get us squirreled or whatever people call it, but I don't want to get us kind of targeted by Scientology. But there is certainly
everything's about cults.
Yeah, there is certainly a reference to Scientology as a religion in there. And I know that there is a story that Paul Thomas Anderson showed The Master to Tom Cruise, and there was apparently a heated argument, and that's why Tom Cruise has not been in anything of Paul Thomas Anderson since this movie. You know, and remember, this is Tom Cruise who did Magnolia and was arguably one of the best performances I've ever seen by anybody when he did Frank, the motivational speaker in Magnolia. It was amazing. And The Master, as I said, the reason I love The Master so much is just while you were off, Brendan, I gave it a big old ringing endorsement of my favorite Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I said my favorite Mission Impossible is Mission Impossible 3 because of this guy. All right, he's so good. What's your name, Ethan? I'm gonna find it. Oh my god, incredible. And Philip Davian he plays. And he's great. Even in Punch Drunk Love, where he's playing the guy who's like, shut up on the phone. He's amazing. He's amazing in everything. He's great in Along Came Polly. I miss Philip Seymour Hoffman every single day. I think he's one of the, well, I think he was our Gene Hackman is the way that I always describe him. My favorite. And in this, he plays a cult leader who is, many believe, allegedly, my lawyers have told me to say, is based around L. Ron Hubbard, called Lancaster Dodd. And while every other movie that I've talked about has been more or less character, you know, a character study that I've talked about, we had The Wrestler, we had Road to Perdition, which was kind of father and son, but character study still. And then Man on the Moon as well, character study. This one's kind of two characters, and it's the characters of these two guys, Lancaster Dodd and Joaquin, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix. And this is one of the coolest scenes as well, this interrogation scene that we've got here. It's a story about a young man. If you've not seen it, it's about a young man, this guy here that Joaquin Phoenix plays, called Freddie, who goes off to war. And when he comes back from war, he's got PTSD. He's an outcast. If you look at this horrible blurred picture, I don't know why it's blurred, but there we go. This blurred picture here of him, he's kind of got this kind of weird gait, and all of the other sailors don't really want anything to do with him. He's got these weird kind of sexual urges, which kind of links back to the ice storm. Sweeney opened the sexual door, so therefore I'm walking straight through with The Master. He has these weird sexual urges, like they make a woman out of sand and he tries to fornicate with it. He ends up going and pleasuring himself into the sea. He's a very strange guy, you know what I mean? And perfect, ripe for pickings for a cultish religion led by this guy. And what's amazing is as you go through the film, the way in which Lancaster Dodd, who is like this cult figure, as I said, his whole religion, his whole thing that he's built called The Cause, just starts to fall apart. People start to call him out for being a bullshit artist and stuff like that. In the meantime, Freddie here starts to learn what he is. And, you know, he goes from being this guy who's obsessed with sex and desperate to have it. He eventually gets to have it. And then he leaves. He leaves the cult. This scene is my favorite. by an absolute mile. Apparently, an improv scene where Joaquin Phoenix is just absolutely losing his mind. He's kicking the hell out of this prison. They're both kind of arrested and put into these prison cells, and he kicks the hell out of his toilet, breaks it. Apparently, it was like a sort of antique toilet, an antique jail cell, and he broke it, so production had to pay for it. And you have this kind of massive kinetic performance on this side of the screen. Meanwhile, as I said, Philip Seymour Hoffman just stands absolutely rooted to the spot. And you have these two in orbit of each other, is the best way I can describe it, acting off each other. There's 6 scenes in total where they act opposite each other. And we slowly watch them, crumble, I suppose is the best way to describe it. And I love this. I love this film. The Master, Paul Thomas Anderson. I could go into a lot more detail. This ending scene, if you've not seen it, then watch it. I won't, please pause this and fast forward it, whatever. But this ending scene where he's in London, they've moved to sort of England. He sings a song called Slow Boat to China, I think it's called. And lots of people have different sort of interpretations as to what this scene might be him doing. I think it's him trying one last time to torture Joaquin Phoenix's Freddy, to try and make him realize what he came from and what he was before he came to the cause. But who knows? It's just a phenomenal masterpiece. And I love this film very much. And I think it's one of Paul Thomas's most underrated films. Well, it is Paul Thomas's most underrated film. People called it a flop. I don't. I think it's up there with Phantom Thread for me. It's up there. I mean, One Battle After the Other I loved. There Will Be Blood I loved. But this one I'd say is alongside Phantom Thread as my third favorite.
This is a movie that it's definitely time for me to come back and watch. I remember when it came out, I saw it in theaters. I think this was actually the first PTA movie I saw in theaters. I did see There Will Be Blood like after it came out. Did not get to experience that or Magnolia. So this was the first one. And I remember being a little divided. That's when I was starting to mature my palate on movies and to understand some of the core concepts of this film. But now revisiting it, one, I need to revisit it, and two, it is like the acting in the way that PTA is able to navigate that subject matter. He's just a master. I mean, even from that going into Inherent Vice, like those two films, I think are kind of this weird period for PTA doing some of his best work that ultimately wasn't appreciated, maybe to the capacity that he thought it was going to be. And I think the master always has this prestige. I feel like Inherent Vice is kind of the black sheep for PTA that didn't get wide distribution. That had a very like select theater run, but I also love that movie. You know, PTA, he has this ability as one of the great American auteurs to be able to navigate these different themes and be able to speak to them so well. And yeah, highly recommend anybody going to rewatch that film. And it's a great pick. You know, I loved that movie for the way that one Philip Seymour Hoffman was just a goat. And I know he died shortly after that. I want to say a year or two after that film. You know, it wasn't too long.
He does this line in it that I can't say on here because it'll get us taken down or anything, or you'll have to edit it, which is sad. But he says pig F word, and it comes out of nowhere, and it is just this. As I said, I don't know how much of it was written, and how much of it was improvised, but it is effortless and it's exceptional. And I'd even say that I don't see anybody get out of Joaquin Phoenix what PT gets out of Joaquin Phoenix. Like you just said, Inherent Vice, it's exceptional the way the performance, whether you like the movie or not, just watch it for Joaquin Phoenix. It's brilliant. It's exceptional for that reason, you know. And I'd also say as well, let me throw this one in. Amy Adams plays Lancaster Dodd's wife, Peggy. And she's amazing. The way that she builds him up. Because if anything, she's more vindictive than he is. She truly believes in the cause. And she knows how to get people to keep following. She knows how to treat people if they start to lose their faith in the cause. You know what I mean? And that's brilliant. There's even not a cameo, a supporting part for Rami Malek in there. Oppenheimer, pre-Bohemian Rhapsody, pre-Mr. Robot, pre any of that. You know what I mean? Like a young Rami Malek. Yeah, comes out of the woodwork. It's spectacular. And as I said, if you want to get into PT, probably not this one to get into PT. I'd say if you want to watch Boogie Nights or any of those, you'll really kind of get a good flavour of what PT is. But then, yeah, come to this one a little bit into your watching of him and see what he does, because it's brilliant. And it's his first time working with a new, right, if you watch Punch Drunk Love, which was Robert Elswit, and then There Will Be Blood, Robert Elswit as his DP, you then come to this one, which is Mihai Malamari Jr. If I've said that wrong, I apologise profusely. But this young lad, who I don't think had done anything much prior to that, he turns up and does this. Now, I spoke to somebody who worked with PT on a few music videos and on One Battle After the Other, and they were talking about how PT. Oh no, they didn't. They worked with PT on Boogie Nights. This is a great story that I'll tell on another one. But he was the AD for PT on Boogie Nights. This guy that I spoke to, his name's John Wildermuth, phenomenal AD, and he basically says PT could shoot it himself, right? He could DP for himself, but he brings in people who he knows will be not just malleable, but also receptive to his ideas, receptive to what he wants to do, and will be able to frame a shot really well. And this guy this Mihai Malamari Jr., and I'm butchering his name again, I apologize. But yeah, came out of Robert Elswit finishing. This guy worked with PT on The Master. And I love it. The shots in this movie are great. The way that he allows these long scenes to draw out, the slow push-ins that he does, all fingerprints of P.T. Anderson. Yeah, it's a masterclass. I really, really love this movie. So give this one a watch. And Sweeney, give us your special choice, your extra selection.
Absolutely. Just one last note about the DP. He is the DP that went on to shoot Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, which is very arresting. Yeah, he also shot Jojo Rabbit by Taika, so super fascinating. But great pick.
Another beautiful movie, by the way. I mean, the shot of the mother and the mother's feet right after the saddest point in the film, brilliantly shot. Yeah.
I definitely need to revisit it. So for my final pick, and everyone, I appreciate you asking to see what my pick is. It's actually another film that I feel like is severely misunderstood, and I'm going to speak to it in a couple different ways. And this is based on the Russian novel Solaris, which Andrei Tarkovsky actually did the original version of this film, but this one is the American remake, or the American version, if you will, by awesome director Steven Soderbergh, another favorite director of mine, and someone who is able to teeter the line between big major Hollywood productions down to these indie productions. And this film was one that kind of fell through the cracks, I would say, of the early 2000s, at a time where movies were so fierce. I mean, from 1999 to 2000, 2001, 2002. Let's just look at the best movies that came out in 2002. Best movies 2002, and I think we'll be able to see why this movie probably did. I mean, Lord of the Rings, already just putting that up there, 2002, 2003. So two of the best movies ever made: City of God, The Pianist, Finding Nemo, which I'm indifferent on, Old Boy. Some of these are 2003. Catch Me If You Can, Spielberg, big Spielberg film, Pirates of the Caribbean, which Gore Verbinski has that new movie out right now that I really want to see.
Yeah, good luck.
Have you seen
Have
it?
fun, don't die.
Yeah, I want to see that. The Bourne Identity movies kicked off. Minority Report.
Oh,
I just rewatched that movie, and that movie is a 10. Honestly, I love Minority Report. Hero, Memories of Murder. Oh my God, Memories of Murder is probably Bong Joon-ho's best movie. So keep that in mind. This was a movie that
analysis.
Oh yeah, 100%. So this movie, a troubled psychologist is sent to investigate the crew of an isolated research station that's orbiting a bizarre planet. Very straightforward plot, and essentially this character is he's dealing with the loss of his wife. Essentially, that becomes remanifested while he's on this ship that is near this planet. And I'm not going to go too deep in the story elements on this part, but I'll explain why I really love it. Is I think it fits a really awesome subgenre of sci-fi, which is this almost kind of like meditative sci-fi that Andrei Tarkovsky himself was so good at. And I'll pull up the original Solaris. I highly recommend watching both. This is actually considered by many Andrei Tarkovsky's best film, but in many interviews, Tarkovsky denounced this movie as being one that he hated because it was too plot driven and too like mainstream for him as a movie, which I think is super funny. I love this concept of directors critiquing their own work in the same way Scorsese didn't like Shutter Island because it was too much plot, or Cape Fear. Of course, he needed to make that movie likely to hit any type of contracts or just to make money at the box office to secure his next film. But Solaris, Andrei Tarkovsky did it in 1972. It's based on a really famous Russian novel. And it is a great film. Like, I highly recommend if you were to watch Soderbergh's, to watch this one first and then you would watch Soderbergh's. I don't think you should watch it the other way around. But going back to Soderbergh's version, there's just so much that I love about this movie because one is it captures the sci-fi perspective at that time for how we perceive society and civilization to evolve, especially as we go into space. And one, the cinematography in this movie, which I don't know if Soderbergh shot this as Peter Andrews, which if you don't know enough about Steven Soderbergh, he is this multidisciplined hyphen director that honestly can do everything. In Cliff Martinez, yeah, so Steven Soderbergh, he not only directed this movie, he was the cinematographer, which at this point everyone knew at like everyone knows he's the DP for a lot of his films, but back then, I think because of union rules and the way that it was perceived for a DP to also be the director of photography and an editor, there was just a lot of bureaucracy, so he went under these essentially fake names, these aliases, to be able to do all of these roles on set. And if there's one thing that I want to say about Soderbergh that I always find so fascinating is his perspective as a cinematographer. It's never the most beautiful cinematography, but the way he perceives his worlds and the way that he moves the camera. And he was an early adopter of digital cinema on films like Che Part 1 and 2. He always straddled this line of being this kind of like out there indie filmmaker that gets a lot of money, and he did that exactly here with Solaris, and he also did it with Ocean's 11, and he did that with some of his other bigger films that he was collaborating with George Clooney at the time. And I think this film is essentially what was the catalyst for them to do Ocean's 11. I'd be curious to look into the insight on that, but this movie, what I love about it and some of the stuff, and we actually just talked about this on a piece of education at Filmmakers Academy, is using this filtration. They were still shooting 35 millimeter here, but these grad filters. And I remember even being younger when I watched this movie, this weird gradient that's on top of a lot of the shots to kind of create this claustrophobia, this pressure that's on our protagonist. And I can't even remember his name, Kevin's, like, that he has to experience in this life that he's living, especially after the loss of his wife. And I just love the world building, and there's stuff here. You can see Soderbergh is going for this almost 2001 look at kind of science fiction. And like, I mean, this is Contact. Even look at that, very reminiscent of Contact. Then we go back to Solaris. Look at that. I mean, the lighting design in the set building and everything in this world, it's really cool. But this is what I was speaking to with that very early 2000s, late 90s kind of sci-fi look. Event Horizon, think of movies that were similar, or like Mission to Mars is another famous one. I love the way that we perceive space travel, which I actually think became more refined and more appropriate when you think of movies like Ad Astra, which I think has a really strong pulse on how Western civilization and global space travel will ultimately look. But yeah, this is a movie that I think a lot of people, one, did not see, slept on. It even has some amazing early roles from the likes of Viola Davis, you know, which is an awesome actor in this film. This actor who has not done too much since then, but this is Jeremy Davies' awesome role. This woman, which is Natasha I don't even know how to say her last name, but she does a really awesome job in this movie. And it's just one that I appreciate. I wanted to throw it in there. I don't regard it the same levels as The Ice Storm or Lahane or Funny Games, but when you look at Soderbergh's filmography in particular and where he was operating at in his career and as a director who just, one, I just saw that, is this producing? I did not know Soderbergh produced Lynn Ramsey's We Need to Talk About Kevin, which is another 10, which would make it.
Whoa.
I honestly don't even know why that's not on my list. But Soderbergh, what's cool about him is he's super collaborative. Him and Fincher helped a lot of people get their early movies started. And Soderbergh, look at all of the movies he's in projects he's collaborated on since then. Like,
True.
it's a crap ton, in
Yeah.
TV shows. And he does he's a multi-medium director operating at his finest, cinematographer. What's cool about Soderbergh, a separate kind of like story about him, he did
Mm.
Magic Mike, the first one, which everyone knows. And then for the second one, which was Magic Mike XXL, he did not direct it. Gregory Jacobs did, but he just returned just as the cinematographer. And I love this concept of a director and a filmmaker to kind of, like filmmaking is a very ego driven medium, for better or
It is.
worse. I think the ego is one of the better parts of being a filmmaker, and what you need to have is a perspective. And by, you're going to make this happen no matter what. But what I love about Soderbergh is he seems like this guy who's not only a great filmmaker and a talented artist, but also really wants to share the resources that he has. And for something like Magic Mike, an IP that he crafted, he platforms another director and says, hey, you do that. I'm just going to shoot it. I love that concept. And who knows, like maybe Soderbergh was a complete twat, like in the making of this movie. I have no idea, but I would like to think that he is this super collaborative, and based on all accounts, he's a very fun filmmaker to work for, especially if you can get in his pacing like the Nick. He not only produced, directed, shot, and I think even partially helped write some of the scenes in some of the scripts for this show, which is probably hands down my favorite series. It's not perfect, but it's my favorite just for the level of like tenacity Soderbergh has to be able to pull off this production. And that's what I love about Soderbergh when you look at his work. He's just operating on so he did Ocean's 11 in 2001, which if you have not seen that movie, love that movie. I saw that
It's
movie in
great.
theaters. That was another great movie theater experience. Like, don't get me wrong. It's like, not like the most
Mate, it's tight
sophisticated
as well.
movie, but it's fun. The worst part of the movie is
tight.
like Don Cheadle's awful English accent. That's probably like the worst part of the movie. But everything else is
Yeah.
like really solid.
No, but it's tight, man. I mean, like there isn't a hole in that script.
No.
Every single thing is tied up in that, and it's great. And look, he gave us, I think he did, with Ocean's 11, he gave us Brad Pitt and George Clooney's bromance. That I mean, like they tried to recapture it in Wolves, they've tried to recapture it in other things, but yeah, like they're great together, just as a pairing. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, like, dude, it was an ensemble movie which Soderbergh directed. It's brilliant. This guy that I worked with on the last thing I worked on, this prop guy, he was the prop guy for Soderbergh, and he was telling me that the days are shorter, but you work from the second that he gets on set. Like it's not like there isn't like these kind of like this lull into the filmmaking like that you sometimes get. This is literally he turns up, you shoot, you work, and then that's that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that he said to me, I think this was the line he used, if he could shoot French hours, he would. Which French hours, for those people who don't know, it's basically if you could work through lunch with a lunch platter that people could just go and grab at while they were still working, he would do that. Like he would work 14 hours and then that'd be that. You know what I mean? But yeah, he said that you feel like you've worked a day under Soderbergh. And I always thought that's always what I'm reminded of whenever I think of a Soderbergh film.
Yeah. And to speak to this for real, because he was asking, so yeah, Peter Andrews was his pen name for cinematography, and then Mary Ann Bernard was his pen name for editing. So he early in the day, and I still think he credits all of his movies that way, just people know, but back in the day, it would be these two different kind of aliases that he would use to be able to speak to the different attributes of the film. So if you knew, of course, if you worked on the production, you would know Soderbergh did those roles, but optically outward facing, I think he was trying to skirt some potential stuff with unions and contracts that were far more in place back then than I think it is now. And maybe, I mean, real, you could probably speak to that better, but super fascinating director. And this guy, I mean, Soderbergh is just, he's an enigma when he comes to filmmaking, even of his like contemporary work. If we just take a second to look at it, like last year, Presence, a movie from about a ghost, all told from the perspective of a ghost. Black
Yeah,
Bag, which I loved Black Bag. That was a
I
return to
enjoyed it.
form for
It was like
Soderbergh,
a
in my
play,
opinion.
wasn't it?
So good. If you have not seen
Yeah,
this, highly recommend it. One of my favorite films from last year. And it was just a tight movie and
it was.
great writer. Great writer, you know? And
He doesn't tend to do things that aren't so well thought out. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
incredibly detailed, incredibly well thought out. Like the scene I'm reminded of with Black Bag is that bit when they're in the boat together and he's got like the lunch pail and he's got the gun in there and stuff like that. And it's just kind of this it's drawn out so much that you create so much suspense. It's incredibly well done. You know?
Mhm.
Yeah. I love Soderbergh. What's that one that he did with Benicio del Toro? And I don't think it's Don
Che?
Cheadle. It might be.
Oh, yeah, no, it's Don
No.
Cheadle, No Sudden
Oh,
Move. You're talking about No
No
Sudden
Sudden
Move.
Move, and it
Yeah.
had Michael Keaton in it as well. Yeah, brilliant film. Like really, that one's gone under the radar as well. That one, I think, because it went straight on to streaming. But whoa,
Yeah.
great
This was at
movie.
the
Really
time where
great
he
movie.
was doing a lot of stuff with iPhones. No Sudden Move, I think, was his first film back from a series of doing iPhone movies. So he's a
Wow.
really interesting guy because starting
Mm.
after Logan Lucky, he did Unsane, High Flying Bird. I even think The Laundromat was shot all on an iPhone and he was super. And this is like pre 28 years later iPhone. This is like crap iPhone and he's making these movies work on an iPhone. I honestly, that's one of the periods of Soderbergh that I probably like the least because he kept doing this thing where it was like, I quit film. Now I'm only shooting on an iPhone. This dude's quit being a film director now, I want to say more than any other film director has ever done based on like the news that I've seen. So he always like does these like these returns, but yeah, I he's super fascinating. And even just like his movies. I mean, going beat by beat. One another awesome. I actually have this criterion, King of the Hill, Great Depression era movie. Not a lot of Great Depression era cinema.
Never
Awesome.
seen it.
Out of Sight, which is really what put him on the map as a director because
Yeah.
Kafka failed. He really spent a lot of time. That almost put him in director's jail and he was out of the industry. Then went on to
Mhm.
do Aaron Brockovich, which I think he won Best Director and Best Picture for Aaron Brockovich, right? I'm almost certain of that.
I think
Let's
so.
see.
Let me check.
A great movie. If you've not seen Aaron Brockovich, I know that Julia Roberts
Definitely
at
won
least
Julia Roberts.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it won one Oscar, which was Julia Roberts, but it was nominated for Best Director and Best Picture, but it did not, which I think Danny DeVito was the producer of Aaron Brockovich, which is funny. I know that we were talking about
Yeah.
him
Producing
earlier.
Man on the Moon.
Yeah,
We've done a 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. We've done it.
dude. So that is my pick. I love Solaris. I know that we're talking a lot more than Solaris itself, but this is a hidden gem within the filmography of
Mhm.
Soderbergh and within the larger 2000s movie, like slate and roster. This is one that it's probably not going to be your favorite movie, but it is one that you should not overlook, you know?
Yeah. We should definitely do. We've talked about this before, but we should definitely do a episode where we just talk about our favorite space movies.
Yeah.
Because, like you said there, you've mentioned Ad Astra in this episode and in the last one, and I'd agree with you on Ad Astra. First Man, the Chazelle one. I don't know if you've got to see it yet. You've had a busy week, but like that, I wouldn't sleep on that. That is a top-notch movie. And Ryan Gosling, like I'd say, best performance I've seen Ryan Gosling give, even including Drive, which I love. But yeah, we should definitely do space movies. I think that's a good one. I think war movies we talked about in the past.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think drive-in movies as well. So I get to talk about Bullet, which Brendan Reel knows about because I wrote about car rigs once for Brendan's Legacy Grip shout out newsletter. And I wrote about car rigs and how the car rigs that they did on various different movies. And I wrote about the car rigs on Bullet. And it is one of the coolest movies. But one of the coolest things is learning about the car rigs. And even Spielberg turned up on set one day so he could see the different car rigs that they had. We could talk about Grand Prix and the car rigs in that and how they were mounting things to people's heads and stuff. Like, We could do Mangold, Ford versus Ferrari, and how they did car rigs. Like, we could definitely do car movies, which would be cool. Like, do about Rush and that one. Like, I think that you and I
Forgotten
have got some good
cinema.
episodes planned. Yeah.
Oh, one movie, and I'm just gonna share this is my last screen share, and I think we have to do
Yeah.
one on like forgotten 90s and 2000s cinema because there was just so many movies coming out in that period. But there's one that I frequently refer to that no one's seen. And if someone's actually seen this movie, please like
Oh,
drop
dude,
me a
I've seen it.
Dude, Changing Lanes. I saw this movie as a kid. Again, it's like not that great of a film, but so fun. I saw this in
Concept
theaters.
is great.
Yeah. Awesome. This was when like being a lawyer was super big in New York City and Manhattan, this concept of like white collar work and, you know, everyone having their Blackberries. That was like super big in early 2000s movie, but this is one that I constantly reference in like my house is Changing Lanes. And I just love like this whole film. So if you have not seen this, this is a fun like, you know, throw it on, grab a bag of popcorn, take a hit, do something, enjoy this movie because it is super fun.
Yeah. I remember watching that. I remember referencing that when I did a write up on Benjamin Button, because there is a scene that says if she had done something, what was it? Oh yeah, if Kate Blanchett's character had been 5 seconds earlier or 5 seconds later to this section, this whole series of events wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? And I always find that that's kind of where Changing Lanes is. And same with Sliding Doors, another one that we forget about.
Changing Lanes, Sliding Doors.
Sliding Doors.
What else is moving?
These 90s movies are all movement based. And also, you're right about lawyers, because you've just mentioned earlier on. You mentioned about what was it? The Pacino movie where he's blind, Scent of a Woman. All about lawyers, mate. They love those lawyers.
You think of like Philadelphia with Denzel Washington and Tom Cruise.
Denzel's
like, it was a lot of inner city kind of like white collar dramas. That was super huge in the 90s and 2000s when everyone was kind of chasing that yuppie drive a BMW lifestyle. That was super popular. But Chris, this was a great one, dude. 6 awesome movies. I'm going to quickly rack them off. Funny Games, Michael Haneke. The Ice Storm, Ang Lee. Lahane, Matthew Kasovitz. Road to Perdition, Sam Mendes. The Wrestler, Darren Aronofsky. Man on the Moon, Milos Forman. If you missed, we talked about those. We're going to be posting this on YouTube and Filmmakers Academy, but these are 6 movies. If you have not crossed them off your watch list, you need to, because they have shaped the way that we look at movies. They are some of the best stories, and a lot of them are just character stories. And, you know, it just goes to show how awesome the 90s and early 2000s were for cinema. And I can't wait for the next one, Chris. You know, this is a good one.
Me neither. This was good. Thanks very much for joining us, guys. Those who stayed all the way through. It's been fun. 3.5 hours. We have clocked in another one, and it's been fun. Thank you, Brendan.
And stay tuned. We're going to announce. Yep, we're going to announce what the next one is. So follow us on Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. And yeah, man, Chris, good stuff. We'll see you on the next one.
See you on the next one, guys.
Bye, everyone.